Dock and menu bar?
Yeah, dock and menu bar.
Keyword. Clock. Display time with seconds. Okay, great.
There you go.
Sweet. Okay,
right.
so 15?
20?
20? 20.
20. All right.
Okay. Okay.
We're live.
We're live. Hello, Ryan.
Hey, Becca.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Puppet.
Hello, puppet. How's it hanging? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty great. Grand. No yelling on the bus.
No.
That was very underwhelming, Chris Farley, but...
Well.
Do you know what that's from?
No.
Good, great, grand!
Oh, yes.
No yelling on the bus.
Yes, okay. Yes.
Billy Madison.
Yeah. Been a while.
Yes.
Well, what's new? What's new with you?
Let's see. I had a few weeks ago I had somebody reach out. It was probably been a couple of months by now, but I had somebody local reach out that goes to the local college here at NKU. She's in ceramics, and I think she's technically like an education, like ceramics education or art education.
Yeah.
And she had interest in ceramics, and she reached out because one of the teachers talked to me and or mentioned me because I'm close by and we're friends anyways. And then was like, hey, you should reach out to him and see if like he needs a assistant or needs help with some things, or he's close by. So she actually came over on Monday with Erica as well, and she's been kind of like learning a little bit about glazes and mixing glazes.
Oh, nice.
So she came over about 3 or 4 weeks ago just to take some notes and learn how I make my own glazes and what process goes into it.
Yeah.
She helped like make my own glaze in like small batches and kind of like mirrored Erica. And then this time she came in and helped mix like a big batch of it.
Nice.
So that was kind of fun. And we kind of made a night of it. So she helped with that, and then helped sand some pots and just chat and hang out and stuff. So that was pretty fun. That was Monday. So that was cool. I never really have people reach out like that, just kind of on a whim.
Yeah.
So I was like, initially I kind of didn't respond for quite a while, and then I was like, you know what? I can make time for that.
I can do that. Yeah.
So, I always like it when people like show initiative to like learn something and they're not.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, if they're willing to reach, like, it takes some balls to reach out to somebody and just be like, hey, I don't know you, but I want to learn something from you. Can you teach me?
Yeah. One time, I'm going to say his name because it still makes me mad to this day. One time I emailed James Diem, who is like, was one of my like favorite potters. He's a
DIEM.
He's in the West Coast, and it was like way, way early on. And I was like, hey, I'm just doing some research, and I was wondering if you could let me know who your favorite potters are. And because I want to kind of like do a chain and see like who people's favorite potters are, and then see who the favorite potters, who their favorite potters are, and blah, blah, blah. And
okay, yeah, I follow him. I was like, I recognize that name somewhere.
Yeah, he wrote me back the rudest email and was like, no, I don't do that. You can find your things, like you can figure it out on your own. And
so you were just asking for his insights of who he appreciates as a
just
potter?
like who he appreciated. And he was like, I don't want to tell you. And then he was like, and also you should really reconsider your email address. And at the time, my email address was The Great Dictator 5. Which, as you know, is Charlie Chaplin's greatest film. But maybe he's not well versed in film. I don't know. But yeah, he was so rude. And I was like, fine, I'm never buying your pieces ever again.
Wow. Do you think it's the email that just set the tone for and he just came into it hot?
I guess, I don't know. It was a cold email. So, and I
Wow.
never continued my project.
I think a lot of those kind of, and I'm sure a number of people that are friends of ours on Instagram and stuff get just messages on messages and things all the time where people ask them for things, and it's about how
Yeah.
you ask, and as
Yeah,
long as
for
you're
sure.
being like gracious with them and like you do your due diligence
Yeah.
to not ask like what I would say dumb questions, but you don't,
Ask dumb
ask
questions.
them super basic things that is not worth their time to respond. But if it's like thoughtful and all
Yeah, and
that,
I mean like it's
good
one
with
thing
it.
to ask like, "Hey, can I have your glaze recipe?" when they're not like for us, people, like somebody messaged me today and was like, "Hey, that white glaze recipe." That's totally fine. I give that out freely, but like to talk to somebody who has never shared it ever and be like, "Can I
Yeah.
have your glaze recipe?" That's one thing, but this was like, "Hey, who's your favorite potter?"
Hmm.
Like,
Where it's like that doesn't cost them anything to tell you that. I mean, it takes time for
nothing.
them to respond, but
Yeah.
it shouldn't be something crazy.
Yeah, so anyway, that lost all respect for him.
Wow. Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah, even I've even got a couple, I still have a couple emails in my inbox that are, "Hey, I'm looking for some glazes. Can you give me these two or three glazes?" And I'm like, even some, just the way they
Yeah.
say it, I'm like, I could easily
Mhm.
just respond back with the recipes, but sometimes I get put off a little bit with the way it's worded of how they
Oh,
ask.
for sure. It
So I'm
is.
like, even though I
It's
would give it freely, the way you're asking makes it sound like I want to do the exact same combo that you're doing. So give me these two recipes. It's not that
right.
it's not that basic of a request, but the way it's coming off, it's just like,
I don't know. I know. Uh, if people are rude, I just shut down completely.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would be open to just listing all of my glaze recipes, but at the same time, I kind of want them to make the effort.
Mhm.
Besides just them going to the website and finding it,
Yeah,
I kind of want them to make the effort to ask for it
for sure.
and then leave it up to me to decide if I want to give it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For me, I think glazes for me, like especially the white, it's like it's just a fucking white glaze. Everybody needs a good white glaze. Like
Right.
that's nothing. But yeah, it is tough when they're like, "Hey, I've done no research on this. Can you do this for me?" But also at the same time, I fucking hate glazing. So I would totally, if I had the resources that we have now and hadn't figured out how to glaze, I'd be like, "Yo,
Yeah.
hey."
And I think some people don't realize that I make them myself. So they could be asking, "What are the glazes you use?"
Oh,
And
for sure.
they think you're going to tell them a commercial one, but
Yeah.
it's not useful for me to tell you glazes that I mix myself.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah, for sure.
"Oh,
Like,
well, do you mix that yourself?" And then you just give them a recipe and it doesn't really help them. But if they come into it like, "Hey, I mix my own glazes. I'm wondering if those are ones that you mix yourself or not."
yeah, for sure. Oof, oof, oof. Oh, people.
I don't know. It depends. I mean, generally I'm fine with it because I treat each person individually for
Yeah.
the most part and don't say I hold it against people because it's yet another person asking me for a glaze. So I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? They're like innocently asking it. I don't feel like they go around to everybody's post and just say, "Hey, what's that glaze?" But maybe
Yeah.
they, I don't know. So yeah, that's what we did this week, and then I've just been throwing a lot.
Yeah, because it's Wednesday. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been getting some good days in the studio to just throw, which has been nice.
That's good.
Haven't had any shows lately. I got a show in a couple weeks or week and a half is my next
Yeah.
one in Lexington, so that one should be fun. You just had a show.
I did. I was just gonna pull up the
Oh
because
yeah.
like this doesn't happen very often where I
Yeah,
get to like pull up
Becca was messaging me the day of it
the square.
and was excited.
I was excited because I'll tell you why.
You were treading
Because
cautiously and then I was like, Okay.
I was cautious that day. I felt like I don't like to go into. I haven't done a real show. I've done like your show, which is real, but schmeh.
What do you mean real show?
Like one that I had to pay like $100 for. you know, like
$100 for a one day.
yeah. Like I've sat at Graves Co. and sold pots, but that was everybody was coming there for clay, and I did your show, which was in your mom's backyard,
Right.
and which is like, I
It's
think
not a true
it's
comparison.
not a yeah,
You can't call that a show.
yeah,
You can't call that a real show. Like a,
yeah.
you know.
And so do you want to guess
So
exactly?
what was the
The
set the
cost
stage
was
a little bit of the show.
like $100. There was 3 different tiers of times that you could leave. So it was in this really cute town.
You could leave. What
Um,
do you mean? As a customer?
yeah, no, as the person,
Oh, you
vendor.
could stay until 4 or 6 or 8 or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. So I chose to stay later, but I ended up leaving a little bit early. It wasn't like super strict or anything. It's just that they were having a street dance at the end of the day, and it was like, well, maybe some people will come and shop, and they didn't. But what was I gonna do? I was gonna go home and watch Star Trek. Like, it's
Hmm.
either be at the show or go home and watch Star Trek. Like, there's
Hmm.
no other option.
Or pack
Um,
up in the daylight versus
it
the
was still
dusk.
daylight,
Okay.
so yeah, I wasn't gonna pack up at night. And we parked our cars like right by.
Oh,
It
that's
was like,
cool.
yeah, it was cool because it was a square, right? And there was a courthouse right in the middle, and all the vendors were around the courthouse, and there
Okay.
was parking spots all around the courthouse, and you got to park there. And I there was 3 potters there. I kind of like peeked at two of the other 2 potters. One of them had these cute wind chimes that had little people on them, and then the other one had like plants and stuff. And I was the only like production
Like
style.
functional potter.
Yeah, I mean there was functional pottery there, but it wasn't like
A heavy
25 mugs
quantity
on the wall kind of
production. Yeah.
situation. Yeah.
Okay. And
Um
then the other vendors, not pottery, was it more indie,
Mostly
like
like
food
paint.
and consumables,
No, it
or
was like
was it?
paintings and art
Okay.
and jewelry. So,
Yeah. Okay.
um yeah, and I think I paid 110 maybe with the application fee, maybe 125 with the application fee.
Okay.
And
How long has the show been around? Do you know?
no. Um, it
I
was
think that definitely factors into what I would guess on the what you would make.
okay. I
Because
think
if it was, let's say it's 2 years old, I would have way lower expectations. I would guess
I
you'd
don't
sell
think
like
it's very
400 bucks.
long. I'm not sure, but I
And
guess
it's
last
not a
year it was
month.
real
It's not a
good.
monthly market.
Not a monthly market. It's a like once a year thing,
Okay.
and they provided breakfast and lunch.
Nice.
Subway for lunch, bomb, and super friendly. Setup was really easy. I was next to somebody who was her first show, and she did a great job, but it was so funny. Like, I love people when their first show, like, they always bring like the biggest things ever, and like they have to haul it with like a fucking trailer, and it's like, I love you.
Like they bring way too much stuff.
Yeah, and like she wanted to like have shiplap walls like her studio, and I told her husband, I was like, maybe next time like wallpaper, you know, like thin panels with
Because
like
she had to
shiplap
like assemble
wallpaper.
it, or it was just
Yeah,
heavy
it
as
was like
hell.
to assemble, and it was real fucking heavy. It was so funny,
Uh,
but she did really good. Anyway, so I was selling cups mostly, spoon rests, and I had a few mugs, and then I made quite a few mixing bowls.
Mixing
And
bowls. Okay.
yeah, and
What about garden
so
stakes? Did you have those?
no, I didn't
Or
sell
the
the garden
planters or
snake.
anything like that?
I had some planters. Yeah,
Okay.
and I ended up making this might include a fancy cup sale that
I'm.
was online,
Are
but
you including cash in this too?
no.
No. Okay. I'm gonna say 1,000. I didn't hear the hours. I'm guessing it was like a 10 to 4 or something like that. That you were the 10 to 6.
I think yeah, I was like 10 to 7.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna guess 1,000.
Okay. Oh, I think that on Square I pulled in at the show 847. And then I got a fancy cup order during that and another order online during that. So that kind of like adds in. So like my daily sales was $1,000 like 1,007.
Yeah.
But
So
with cash, I
why
think
do
it
you
was a
not include
thousand
cash in there?
because I didn't count it.
Do you have an estimate of what the
I
cash
think it
would
was
be?
1,000. I have a $100 bill in the back of my phone that I was able to put in there. Um, I, I don't remember what I started with. That was the problem.
Oh, okay.
So, because I just have a cash bag for the farmer's market, so I just take that.
Yeah. I'm guessing it
And
is a majority card though, right?
it was a majority card. But
Yeah.
I think that I probably made like 150 to 200 cash.
Okay.
And I sold a fair amount of the mixing bowls and all of the
Individually?
2 pairs and then the
Okay.
rest individually. Yeah.
Are you only selling them as pairs or?
No. No, I just
Okay.
had them sitting together. I
Cool.
didn't even trim those. They're flat bottom bowls.
Sweet.
I don't know though. It kind of felt dirty. Like I felt a little grimy. Like
Were they
just
light? They were still good weight though, right?
they were fine. They were fine. I didn't feel super grimy, but next time I'm gonna trim them.
Okay.
Um,
And you were doing that for speed?
yeah, and ease.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, and then I sold all of my medium sized stuff like the wine cups, tumblers, spoon rests, snack bowls, and
All of them.
so all those things I sold those mix and match 4 for 50.
You sold every single one of them?
No,
Okay.
those
You said all of them.
I know, like I
I'm
sold
taking
all
it
those
literally.
4. No, you didn't let me finish the sentence.
I'm sorry.
There was like a colon in there and a comma, and you didn't.
Okay, you're just saying you sold a mixture of all your pieces, basically.
Yeah, but they were like on a sale, 4 for 50
Right.
bucks.
Sweet.
So mix and match. And I sold a
People
couple
like that.
mugs. Yeah, people like that. Um, did not sell a lot of the pinch pots, and so I marked the price down, and it sold a little bit more once I marked the price down.
Hmm.
Um,
Were
I
those a
marked it
3
down to
for deal?
it was 3 for 25. I marked it down to 3 for 20.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you used to sell them for like 3 for 15, didn't you?
Yeah, and
So 3 for 20 is
I
still good.
I wasn't comfortable selling them for 20 when I was trimming them, but now I'm not even trimming them. So it's like, who cares?
So you're getting a little greedy with the 25, 3 for 25.
No, not when I had the pinch pots that were all trimmed. Those fuckers take time. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, and so now I've added in a lot more that aren't trimmed at all. And so
I got you.
that's like way faster. I can just let them dry and go.
Nice.
So yeah, so it was good. I was nervous at the very beginning. I was like, this is not going to be good. Everybody's coming in. They're like, oh, these are really nice. Bye. And
Does the company you're in, the other vendors, does that set any of your expectations?
no.
I feel like the other vendors kind of give me a vibe of what people might be coming out to the event for. You know, let's say there's a bunch of food trucks or
Mm,
there's a bunch of consumables like cookies and donuts or like honey, like stuff like
yeah.
that. I feel like if
It was
it's
art. It
less
was
art, then I'm like,
yeah.
people aren't gonna come out and spend to buy.
Yeah, no, it was art. And
That's cool.
yeah, so I like by like lunchtime I was like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. And then my friend came and it got a lot better. So yeah, at one point like I had almost had a line.
That's awesome. How did you
So
set the booth?
I
How did you
had
set the booth up?
I was gonna say I had 26 sales. So
Nice. 26 sales,
um
1,000, about, I don't know,
well
what's like
26
50 bucks.
sales on Square. So
Yeah.
plus the cash ones there was probably like 7 cash. So
Yeah,
oh
that's
the average
about 40 bucks a sale.
yeah the average on Square was $35 a sale.
Okay.
Which
Nice.
usually my average is higher, but because I'm selling cheaper stuff, I think that that's why. Um, and the booth was set up just I borrowed 2 shelves from Rebecca and put most of them on shelves and then a table and then another shelf and then a table with a small shelf on top. So
Mm-hmm. Because you were using those black foldable ones for the most part.
yeah. Sorry, my cat's trying to Lloyd's like, hello, why aren't you paying attention to me?
Pet me,
let me get
please.
my claws out for you. um, yeah. So and then apart from that, so I was really really pleased with the amount of money that was purchased, or
Nice.
and especially with selling such cheap items. You
Yeah.
know, is
See,
like
I think like maybe it's just because I've done enough shows to this point, but I feel like I can judge a certain expectation of a show
mm,
of like what to expect. And for me, the indie market kind of vibe just doesn't produce the sales that I want. So that's where I'm like the art
yeah.
shows and the like having more fine art around you. Maybe that just attracts a certain clientele
Yeah, I
that
know a
brings your
lot of the
sales up.
people didn't
But
even know
it,
it was happening though. Because
yeah,
it was right in downtown, and I think they just like showed up.
yeah.
So
Is it a generally good area like to attract crowds and stuff in that
I think it's a
part of
small
town,
town.
anyways?
Small
Okay.
town.
Oh yeah,
But
you were in Noblesville, right?
yeah, Noblesville, yeah, tiny town. So, I mean, who knows? But I have a tiny little open house type show on the 20th that I'm sure won't produce very much, but that's okay. And yeah. So,
Yeah, I think the smaller shows that happen once a year don't get enough crowds for one-time things, but if they're
mhm.
smaller and they happen more frequently, I'm thinking like farmers market or the like
Right.
monthly markets that are like growing into their audience, like
Yeah.
getting an audience, the frequency helps, but those one-off shows that are still brand new, like don't have the audience established yet.
Yeah.
And that they're kind of scrounging to get vendors to fill it, and
Yeah.
you're getting people that they generally take longer to like they accept applications later, like
Yeah.
closer to the date. So the pool of people that you can get are smaller, and they're kind of like scrounging around to like find shows. And the ones that
Yeah.
are more established have like an application window that's like 9 months out or a year out.
Yeah, for sure.
And people are like working to get into those and apply to those and jury into them. And
Yeah. Yeah.
there's
I
different
don't know.
there's definitely tiers of different shows.
I mean, for sure, I would prefer to sell online and ship. 100%.
Yeah. Was it a good
But
day at least with the weather and stuff? So it wasn't
yeah. Yeah, it only rained on literally only on my booth for like 10 minutes.
no
They
other booths, but just your
it
booth.
like no mine and my neighbors like it had like it was maybe a 20-foot span of rain. There was a line. There was like a line of where it stopped. Um
Yeah. At least you
but
were
in
on
other
concrete. It looked nice. It wasn't
Yeah, I was
grassy.
so grateful that one of the vendors, she was an artist, and one of the vendors was one of the judges for the show, and she was like, "Oh, she has shelves. She needs to be on concrete." And
So it's
so
flat and you're not worried about shells falling over with
I
pottery
was
on it.
yeah, and she's like, "I just wanted to make sure you were on concrete, and like your booth is open, so it was very inviting." And I was like, "You are wonderful. You're a wonderful human
Make
being."
friends with that person.
Yeah. Yeah. In other news, I had to buy a laptop this week because Lloyd
Yeah.
killed my computer. But it's not like totally killed. He
Same story as we talked about before, but
yeah.
it officially went kaputs.
As we imagined it might, I backed everything up or took all the important stuff off. And but it still runs. It just turns itself off randomly,
Yeah, that's
which
frustrating.
isn't conducive to what we're doing here or doing consultations. So,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Uh, business expense?
I mean, yes and no because like
I mean, you have to
no,
have it for the consultations.
I know, but like I guess I could put it as a business expense. I'm not paying with it out of my business account
Oh,
um because I got because Apple has a student discount around this time, around September, before kids go to college, and you don't have to be a student. I don't know why they say it's a student discount. Just
Hey, I did the same thing when I got my Mac.
yeah, I was the one that told you about it, didn't I?
And I got free AirPods with it.
Yeah, and you got free AirPods. So, yeah, somebody was like, "It's a fucking multi-billion corporation. Take
I
it."
don't feel bad about saving $150 from Apple.
No. And so they gave me a $150 gift card, and then if I put it on my Apple card, I could get payments. I could do payments with 0 APR. So I'm not paying any interest. I can pay it over 12 months. And also I get 3% cash back because it's on the Apple card. So I ended up saving like $180. So
Including the gift card or plus the
yeah,
gift
including the gift card, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it still ended up being like $750, but
yeah.
I've never I'm one of those people that it took me a year to buy my last laptop because I was like, no, I don't need it. Maybe I should
Such
get
a
it.
big purchase. I
No,
mean,
it's
you
like,
don't buy a
yeah,
laptop every day. So
and and this one, I literally texted Ryan. And I was like, I'm doing it, and I just bought it on my
yeah,
phone.
you
Right
texted
then.
me like 8 different things, and I was like, I was doing something, so I didn't check it. You were like, I did it. I bought it.
I was like, I've never in my life done that with such a large purchase. And I was just like, I didn't even look at any of the specs because I am a specs person. I'm like, let's compare and contrast. Let's make sure you're getting the best for your money. All these things, should I get the M2 or the M1 chip? Blah, blah, blah. And and I was like, nope, just Becca, get the cheapest fucking laptop you get. Get the cheapest one you can find.
Yeah, you got the MacBook Air, and
yeah.
Hey, down the road, you could always upgrade the RAM. I'm sure take it to Apple and upgrade the RAM, and if you
I
need
want
it.
to.
But I mean,
I haven't done anything on Photoshop or InDesign in such a long time. I don't even think that
buying it for something where you're like, I could potentially use Photoshop and need the RAM, but it's like if you're not doing streaming and all this stuff, then
right, it's literally for us and for doing consultations. That's it.
And more important for that is your internet connection.
Right, and shipping labels. That's it.
Yeah.
So
in these days, the technology's to such a good point that for all those everyday things,
anything you buy,
you don't need anything super fancy.
Right, and I even told you I wish that I could have just used my app, my iPad, which I barely use anyway, and that was a fucking terrible purchase. I never use it, and I would have just replaced my computer with the iPad, but
you couldn't trade it in?
I didn't think about that.
You could always do. I mean, you could probably do. I don't know if you have to do that when you purchase it, but you could always trade it in and get some money back.
It's okay. And but yeah, I was like, I don't know if I can edit the podcast on the iPad, and it shuts off after a certain time on GarageBand, and all these things. I can do consultations on my phone. That's fine. That's easy. But or the iPad or whatever, but this is just a lot easier.
Yeah.
So everybody will be pleased to hear that it is on the MacBook Air box. So if water gets spilled, it will be elevated.
Nice. The only other update before we go on to our other stuff. So remember we were talking about the vehicle stuff?
Yeah.
I didn't buy a vehicle. Don't get your hopes up. But I did do a little due diligence and called my insurance person, and I called my tax person.
Oh, good.
To get a little bit of that information. So I was basically asking them, currently I use my personal vehicle to go to and from shows and to go get supplies and all that stuff. So I was kind of asking insurance wise, do I insure it as a business vehicle or do I insure it as a personal vehicle and just we can use it for both?
Yeah.
And then, what do policies run and, all that kind of thing. And then on the basically they were saying it's way cheaper for a personal policy for having it instead of as a commercial policy for the business, and then I would have to use it only for business. And then if I go the route of the tax route, the way that you get money on vehicles is you can either take the deduction for the miles that you drive, which is what I do now. I got to log them a little bit more carefully with my personal vehicle because I use it for both. Um, and then if it was a business only vehicle and I wanted to go the route of like paying for the insurance and paying for the maintenance and gas and all that, you have to pick one or the other basically. So you
Right.
either go the mileage or and I think they changed the mileage for 2022 with the gas prices and stuff. I think they upped
Oh,
the
nice.
the price per mile. Usually it's like 60 cents or something like that. I,
Yeah.
I heard they changed it. I don't know exactly what it is, but I heard they changed it for 2022. But
Yeah.
um, so I ultimately it just gave me more peace of mind. So I think when I do get it, I'm just gonna do personal insurance,
Yeah. That's what I always used to
all
do.
that stuff, and then
And if it's a good vehicle, you won't need to like do repairs on it. So just do
right,
miles.
and then you know we can use it personally for going on trips or something, or if
Exactly.
we want to go and we need more room because I'm looking for one with like a second row. If there's something that we would want to use a bigger vehicle for, we could do that, and it wouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah, you can find
It'd
one where
probably
you
be
can
more
put a
comfortable.
mattress in the back and then you can go camping.
Yeah, we don't
You
really
could
camp, but
go,
I was like, that'd be a cool option to have. And like
yeah.
mileage wise, it doesn't really get any worse mileage than my
Yeah.
Rogue does. It's pretty much the same. I mean, it's probably because it's a little lighter weight too. There's not a bunch of excess.
Yeah. I was driving home and I realized so stupidly, I drive by this place all the time. There's like a Van Depot sales place right next to my
Oh,
apartment.
really?
Yeah, they have like all of the cargo vans. They have three Sprinters, four Dodges, like four of the
Wow.
Fords. Like I didn't see any of the small ones, but
So it's only like vans and stuff. So it's
yeah,
not
and
like
like
Jeep
trucks.
and Ram.
Yeah,
It's
no, it's like only the cargo vans. And I was like, I'm so stupid. Like when I should go and talk to them.
yeah.
Because I mean, I would really like to buy a used one because it's just so much more
I mean,
cost effective.
yeah, it's going to depreciate pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just kind of scouting on Auto Trader and Carfax online and looking at what's coming across and price.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what I want to spend, and I was also asking him about the whole buying the vehicle if it mattered because ultimately, and all of this is based on me being a sole proprietor, by the way. So
Yeah.
it might be different, and the answers might be a little different. Obviously, don't take my advice. Go talk to your own people based on your own situation. But if I was an LLC, I might do this a little differently.
Or an S corp.
Or an S, yeah,
Yeah.
like it
Like
might be better to be owned by the business.
right, like also it depends on like you can when you lease vehicles for a business, you can write off the payment every single month. So,
Ooh.
yeah, or I don't know exactly how it works, but if I understand correctly, that's an option. So,
I mean, that's essentially your car payment. Like
yeah.
it makes sense that would be an expense. So the last thing was like, hey, if I own it as a personal vehicle, how do I pay for the vehicle? He was basically saying like just pay for it out of your account, like whether you pay like don't pay for it out of the business account, obviously, but I can pay myself like all that money at the end of the year I own anyway. So like I
Yeah.
could essentially transfer all the money that's remaining in the account over to my personal account because it's mine at the end of the year. But
Right.
like, you know, that's kind of what he was saying. So
Right.
I could do whatever. I'm trying to see if I could buy it outright
Yeah.
instead of paying
Payments.
payments because I don't want to pay the interest, and if I have the money for it, it's not that big of a deal. I feel like I
Right.
should.
Well, this is what you've been saving for. So,
Yeah, I don't buy a vehicle every day.
yeah, I'm like you don't buy it. It's like you don't buy a
I,
laptop, you don't buy a vehicle every day. It's
yeah,
like
I've been we've had zero car payments for the last like 3 or 4 years,
yeah.
and we've been riding on saving that money from the car payments, and we can
Yeah.
buy a vehicle. And
Totally. I know I've had no car payments for probably 5 years,
yeah, it's pretty sweet,
and
right?
it is fucking great. And like I kind of like think about that, in my future, and I'm like, "Oh, putting myself back into debt. How
Did
does
did,
that feel?"
did you have did you have student loan debt too?
I did, but not very much. I
Okay.
was
Yeah, I
very
mean that was a
lucky.
weight for sure lifted off.
Yeah.
Car payments lifted off.
Yeah. I was
Now
very
back
lucky in California. The cost is so low, and I became a California citizen my second year. So,
citizen.
um,
Is that what you're California resident?
citizen resident, same thing. It is the same thing. Fuck you.
I don't know if
Anyway,
it's the same thing.
anyway,
Yeah, whatever. You know what we're talking.
I got to pay in-state tuition, so I only had like $5,000 of loans at the end.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah,
Um,
that's totally manageable.
yeah, and which took me a hell of a long time to still pay off. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
But
but that's way better. I think Rachel had like 40,000 or something,
yeah, there's
and
plenty.
there's people that have way more than that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, student loan debt is a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm obviously very fortunate through my life. Lucky, very, very lucky. Um, yeah, okay, let's start. Now that we're 35 minutes in. But we had educational material within that.
Yeah, there was what we're going through and what we can teach from these things.
Yeah.
Would you support people reaching out to others and seeing if they could get a little insight from them? Don't let the DM guy, James DM guy, scare you off from asking people if you can get. I liked when people reach out to me to like see if they
Oh,
can learn from
yeah,
me.
yeah.
I
I
would
think you should
definitely
reach
say
out.
that's something you can learn from that. I would say if you show the initiative, you should do that.
Yeah, yeah. Like I reached out to Jen Beachy also around that same time, and she was wonderful. You know, she like answered my questions, which I later then learned she asked Rebecca those questions
Yeah.
to then email me.
Y'all had like a little circle of
Yes.
like
But
crosstalk.
yeah, I definitely think like having questions is totally okay. Just you have to go about it the right way and understand somebody's time. Like today, somebody messaged me and was like, "Hey, I know you don't do consultations on Thursdays or Saturdays, but those are the only days that I can do it. Is there any way you have any time? I don't want to go over any boundaries or anything that you have." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, we can do it Thursday morning. I just have it off." You know, like
Mm-hmm.
there's no reason why you can't ask nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have the leverage to say no if you want.
Right.
And if they put it nice enough, you're like, I can make adjustments for them.
Yeah. For sure. $60. Hell yeah.
And plus
Anyway.
you feel better about making adjustments for them. It's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I can do that for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. We are going to read a review. This is from Go for Andy, also AKA it's Andy at
Blacktooth pottery?
Blacktooth. Yes, Blacktooth. Thank you. I had the tooth and I was like, is it what?
What color
Blacktooth
tooth?
pottery. um, okay, it says reminds me of a department meeting. And it's 5 stars. It says, "I'm a teacher, and this podcast reminds me of a department. We get together and shoot the breeze for a while, get down to business, get sidetracked about nothing, and by the end of it, we've done some good work, but maybe could have been accomplished in half the time." But would it have been as fun? Probably not. Listening to Becca and Ryan for a few months has made me feel like more of the pottery community because they're so welcoming and honest. Also, beware, this podcast is PG-13 on a good day. Mostly some swearing, but if you've got small kids and can't hang with that, then don't listen in the car on your way to drop off. My kids knowing they're not supposed to use mommy and daddy words, but that didn't stop my son repeating, Becca, a fucking sandwich? Good times. I think he's 2. He's 2? Is he 2? I don't know how old his son is.
His child? I don't know.
Yeah. He was telling me a story about like when maybe it was when his other kids were like one of them was like 2 years old and he like cussed in a restaurant or something. But yeah. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah. We got a recent message through, I don't even remember who it was, but we got a recent message that was kind of like, it was one of the first times they listened and they were like kind of mentioning the cussing and feeling like we were leaving out a portion of audience that can't handle that, or they have kids or whatever. And,
Yeah.
and I politely said like, hey, this is who we are. I hope you can listen to it in a quiet space away from, small ears. And
Yeah.
you
And
know,
here's the other podcasts that don't
and
cuss.
yeah, I was basically like, hey, here's a few other ones that you can listen to that are not explicit if you'd
Yeah.
like. There's a lot of options out there, so
Yeah.
that's kind of how it goes.
And that's why Rebecca doesn't spawn to those. Yeah. Ryan takes those. One for the team.
Yeah, kill them with
Oh.
kindness.
Kill him with kindness. No, you were like the bet. Me and you are a good team when it comes to politically correct responses. Sometimes I
I
take
mean, I'll
it.
still send them
Sometimes
to
you
you, and
take
I'll
it.
be like, all right, let me get the Becca response, just her and I, see what she says, and
Yeah.
then I'll respond, or I'll show her what I responded with,
Yeah.
because I know we don't want Becca touching that.
I am, just so we all know, I am very good at politically correct
You
responses.
can be good, but
I can be good,
you
but
gotta
I
wait. You
have,
gotta get past your gut feeling first.
yeah,
And
I have no energy for that. Okay. What else are we doing?
all right, we had a quick question that was kind of fun. Random question for the list. What would y'all order at Starbucks? And if you don't normally like to go there, pretend you're on a trip and the whole party is stopping there in the morning. What do you order?
This
That's
is
from
a fun question. I
Tori
was thinking about this
Solace
today.
Ceramics.
Tori Solace Ceramics.
Tori
What do
Solace
you order?
Ceramics. I'm easy. I'm chai latte.
Okay.
Maybe spicy chai latte, but chai latte. That's easy. It's not
Okay.
complicated.
Do you go to like coffee shops a lot? Is that a thing that you do?
It said Starbucks. I know. I'm pretty sure most places have a chai latte, so I don't really go to coffee shops now.
Okay.
Or if there's like a coffee truck or whatever at a show, like they pretty much always have some kind of tea option, and it's
Yeah.
almost always chai. So
Okay.
that's what I get.
Yeah, I was actually, what's funny is that I was driving out of like a parking lot getting Chipotle today, and I was thinking about how I haven't been to a Starbucks in maybe over a year.
Hmm.
I don't go there even though I used to work there. Um, if I was gonna be in a Starbucks, I would get a passion tea lemonade with raspberry syrup instead of regular syrup.
Okay. Would you do the same if you were having somebody else order for you? If somebody was going out to get the group
Yes,
drinks, you would say,
passion tea
this is,
lemonade with raspberry syrup.
okay, that'd be a write it down list kind of deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I don't do. If I had to choose coffee, I'd probably get a dirty chai.
Dirty chai. Okay.
I found like I hadn't had a dirty chai until like 2018. They're pretty good. They're not
Yeah.
too shabby.
Yeah. Is that cold or hot?
Cold.
You drink it cold. I would always drink it hot.
I can't
I'm not
remember.
I'm not really a cold chai drinker.
I think it was
I'm not really
cold
like a
because
cold tea unless it's sweet tea, but if
yeah,
it's that like milky, like I'm not going to drink that
I typically don't either.
cold.
And I think the only reason that I got them cold was because it was in Leavenworth in the summer. And
Oh,
the only
outdoor, yeah.
reason yeah, and the only reason I got the dirty chai was because I was falling asleep on my way home. So I
Oh,
like
okay.
had to get some caffeine to wake me up, so
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
The only other one I would get would potentially be sometimes they have that like peach sweet tea.
mm,
I would get that too. That's pretty good.
yeah. Yeah, I am definitely not a Starbucks drinker or a coffee shop drinker at
Yeah.
all.
I
I'd
mean,
rather have
I'll
water.
sometimes have if I go like visit one of the shops that I sell stuff in or whatever, they'll or oh, we're doing that coffee festival here in October. You got that on your calendar, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did I forget about it?
there'll be
Yeah.
coffee shops and tea and stuff there. I usually go. I mean, they got samples and whatnot, so get some good stuff. You're like, I am writing that down.
No, it's on my thing. I just have to look at the dates.
Yeah, it's like late October.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that should be fun. Okay. All right. So the topic today, 44 minutes in.
You know what? We needed it. Honestly, we don't have much to talk about.
Okay, so the topic today was kind of a question that Becca prompted probably many months ago. And it was
Yeah.
basically leaving it at how long does it take to get good at making pottery?
Like, what's the expected amount of time with, like, within certain parameters? You know, like, if you're
Yeah.
taking a class and you
And the
can
word
have,
good is kind of subjective here. I mean,
and the word good is very subjective, but you know, like, sometimes it's like people are in for a year and they're like, I don't feel like I have made any progress, you know?
mhm.
And maybe that has something to do with your teacher, or maybe that has something to do with you. You know, like usually it's your teacher. um, but
I think so. A lot of it's like mentality too. Like, what are you going
yeah,
into it with? Because if you have these high expectations and you're hoping that you get in there and you watch all these videos and you see people making stuff and you're going in there just ready to kill it
yeah,
and you get humbled a little bit.
hmm,
It's like, oh, I'm doing terrible. But it's like it's harder than you thought.
right. Yeah, I was actually uh, Sarah, my studio mate, had a friend, and she had thrown some pots, and then I had also thrown, you know, 27 small snack bowls. And she looked at mine and she's like, wow, yours look really good in comparison to mine. And I was like, hello, I've been doing this for 15 years. Um, like, we don't compare. And I showed her my what the fuck are you doing?
There's water that dripped on this paper next to me. I don't know how.
Is that under the,
There's not a vent here. I don't know. I'll have to ask Rachel. All right.
maybe
Anyways,
you have a rat in the ceiling and they peed.
no, it's clear.
He smells his phone.
I think it's water. Well, the thing is, I saw this paper was all crumpled up, but I didn't notice until just now that it's because water's dripping on it, which makes sense.
Oh,
Okay.
interesting. Okay.
Anyways,
Anyway, I showed her my very first pot, and Sarah was just dying laughing because my first pot looks like a seashell because it's like a bowl, but like one side is like way longer because it was
right,
so off centered,
right.
and like it's so bad. It's like, it's just so bad, and I've kept it for such a long time, and
But for a first timer,
but for
it's
your first time,
pretty on par with.
yeah, it's very on par with what you've done. Like, well, I've seen a lot better first time pods for sure.
Mhm.
But actually I've never seen one just as bad as, as mine. but but um but yeah, I think that like our to set our expectations in a certain way will make you feel better about yourself as you're going. Like if you've started and you're a year in, what does that look like?
What does a year in mean? Are you talking 1 day a week class and you
Yeah, we'll
take
say
it
like, yeah,
to 8 weeks at a time?
1 day a week class, 8 weeks at a time, and you have studio hours like 2 days a week, right? That you could go to if you wanted to. Um,
Yeah. So
so
in a whole year, you probably have 4 sessions,
yeah,
8 weeks, so 32. So at a minimum, you've gone to the studio 32 times.
and we'll assume that each session is 3 hours.
Yeah, so 32, 3 hours. What is that?
96.
Yeah, 96
96
hours on
hours.
the wheel.
96 hours on the wheel
But
plus
well, not on the wheel, but 96 hours total. You probably
total
weren't
class
on the
time.
wheel time.
Yeah. Which, if you break it down like that, is not a lot of time.
Yeah,
Like, that's 2 full work weeks.
yeah. I'm
Wow.
trying to think of a comparable and saying like, would you expect to? I'm trying to compare it to like a profession, but I feel like a profession you'd have to get education. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking of something that you could practice and get. I'm thinking like woodworking or something. But
Mm-hmm.
if you were building a table, do you
Yeah.
think you could build an amazing table and cut the right lengths and sand the right things and stain the right way and
Yeah.
get it looking amazing? Literally your first time out of the gate.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that setting our expectations before we get into something is good, you know. I definitely think so. Let's say you're a year in at 96 hours or whatever, and give or take, plus minus home hours or studio hours when you're practicing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what does that look like? What do you feel would be the techniques throwing wise that you should have pretty down, like pretty solid?
I think you should be able to throw a solid cylinder.
Yep.
I think you should be able to trim a good foot,
Yep.
good thickness. You're going to have some, I think you're still going to have some thick areas because you have to really get a lot of pots in. And usually when you're starting, you're throwing a wide assortment of forms.
Yeah.
You're not narrowing in on, okay, we're only going to throw cylinders and only going to throw bowls for this whole year.
Mhm.
If you were, I think you could get a lot closer on that. You're going to cut through some
Right.
bottoms and like find where that boundary is and where you need to come back a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and then I think you should have another one would be like a solid glaze application. You should know
Yeah.
how to dip glazes, how to have a clean looking bottom where the glaze doesn't run. You kind of have a couple glazes or, 4 glazes maybe that you have a good understanding about, that you have a good confidence in how to apply them. I think that's a good I feel like that's a good benchmark.
Yeah. Adding on top of that, I agree with all of that. Adding on top of it, I feel like from not even what I think, but from my experience with doing consultations, a year out looks like, as far as like each individual thing, it looks like a tough time centering, but not like you get it, but it takes a little time. You know, it's
And
still
what's a little time?
like
Like a minute?
like a minute and a half.
Minute and a half.
And
Okay.
it like sometimes you get moments where it gets like wobbly and wiggly and you're like, I don't know how to fix this. and
At a year in?
yeah, to year in.
Okay.
And but for the most part you're solid on that. And then I would say you're not at like a two pole pot necessarily unless you've been taught um
Oh
very
yeah.
specific polling techniques, but
It's
you're more at like a 5 or 6 pole pot. So
yeah,
you're
I
not
agree
like,
with that.
yeah, so you're not like utilizing your clay, but you're at like a 10-minute pot essentially. So it takes you about 10 minutes to pull like
Hmm.
a basic cylinder mug that's like a nice shape, size, form. And also I would say about a year in, what I've noticed is that you're using a little bit more clay than which is fine. Like this is a fine thing, but you're using like let's say 16 ounces of clay for a 12-ounce cup, whereas like I would use 16 ounces of clay for a 16-ounce cup. But I also have been doing this for a very very long time. Um, so you're using a little bit more clay because you're not maybe getting enough clay off the bottom of your piece. You know, there's you're having to trim off a little bit more. That's what I've seen. That's what I feel like I've seen after a year that seems realistic.
Okay. Um, a couple of things I was thinking about. We'll start at you mentioned some of the weight. What would you say is a weight of clay that should be at the top end of what you're comfortable throwing? Like do you
Oh,
do you
like
see
how
it
much clay?
beneficial to say we're not going to throw you're still in this level, we're not going to throw any more than 2 pounds, 3 pounds.
I would say 2 pounds. Sorry, I
You're
realized that I
adjusting
didn't
something.
plug my computer in.
Oh,
Um, and I think my vacuum wound my computer up around the table leg.
gosh. Full of tangents today.
I I have like the dumbest vacuum in all of existence. Anyway, um, robot vacuums. I would say like max weight that you should be working with or max weight like it definitely depends, right? Because like
I
I
could
was
say like what you should be comfortable throwing at the maximum? Maybe that's
Well,
a good first question.
that depends on if you are strong or not.
Okay.
I really think that you know, I do a consultation with a man that's like 6'5" and like has the biggest hands on the planet, and he can't even throw a 1 pound ball because his hands are too big. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like he should be using 2 pounds instead of 1 pound, you know,
Right.
just because that's proportional to his size. But I would say like an average normal sized human, 1.5 pounds is normal.
You should be. Yeah. You should be
Yeah.
pretty confident, or I'm trying to think of the right word. Confidence, fine.
Yeah, confidence, great.
You should be
Yeah.
able to be confident in a pound and a half.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, a pound and a half, honestly, that can get you a lot of form. Like, out of all the forms I make, I don't make but maybe 10% of pieces over a pound and a half.
Yeah.
So, I
Pound and
mean,
a half
you have a
is good.
lot of leeway with a pound and a half. I
Oh
mean,
Lord.
obviously, it's going to be a little thicker. You're not going to get as big of things because you're still learning how to get the optimal height out of and
Yeah.
use as much clay as possible. But yeah, pound. I was thinking more. I was thinking like 2 pounds probably is
Yeah, a
good.
pound and a half to 2 pounds. I think that's good.
What about? Do you think it's beneficial to limit how much you could use? Would it be beneficial to say, okay, you're at this skill level, we're not going to throw any more than 3 pounds?
That's a good question.
I mean, do you see it being
Personally,
beneficial at all to be like, hey, we can throw 5 pounds?
personally, I think it is beneficial because when you are Lloyd, sorry, when you are, uh, okay, I'm gonna say this plainly and probably offensively, but I'm not pointing at any single person. But when you are bad at throwing and you throw something 5 pounds, that 5 pounds turns into 3 pounds because you've taken off so much fucking clay from the bottom and from the sides because you can't center it. So, like, throwing a 5 pound piece when you can't even throw 3 pounds is almost useless. Like, you have to learn how to throw small before you can learn how to throw big, you
Okay.
know? And I do think that trying it out is always beneficial. But like sometimes I see videos that are like, I'm throwing the biggest piece ever, or, you know, I'm like throwing a really big piece, which is great, awesome. But that piece, like, that is a 10-pound bowl, I could have done in 5 because they're like not utilizing the clay to the best of their abilities, you
But part
know.
of that is you've thrown
I realize that.
a
I
long
understand.
time. But
I understand that, but still, like, they're just taking off clay when they're centering the clay. Like, they are not centering well enough.
oh,
So
I
they're
gotcha.
literally taking pounds off of the clay, you know?
Just because of how they're centering it and how they're using their hands, and there's not enough
Yeah.
water, and
And you're
it's
just like
scraping and
taking
it's
chunks
dragging.
off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I would say if you're taking like chunks off of clay and if you're taking half of the weight of the clay when you're throwing, then maybe you need to learn how to throw just a little bit less, learn how to throw that well or learn how to center it well and
Mhm.
then move up, you know? I
Okay.
think that you can prematurely like go to throwing
Yeah.
a certain
D- don't
weight.
feel that seeing people throw really big pots. Um, I think it puts a conception out there. Con conception? I want to say misconception,
Misconception.
but it puts a
Misconception.
thing out there that like throwing more pounds of clay is like
Makes you better.
great or better.
Yeah.
But if you don't throw them well
Yeah.
and you have to trim off a large chunk of it, um, the pot, I feel like the pot has better integrity and better quality if
Yeah.
you can get the evenness
Mhm.
thrown and have the good, I don't know, the good like consistent walls and
Yeah.
semi-consistent walls, you know what I mean? When you utilize the clay to its fullest for the most part
Yeah.
versus cutting away clay to
Yeah.
get the end product that you want. I get if it's like a goblet or something, like you cut away the clay
Right,
because
right,
it's
right.
still a single piece. But
But
if it's like,
there's a certain beauty that comes with throwing a piece and having the shape that you threw it be the shape that it is at
yeah,
the end, you know? Um,
like trimming more than just the bottom,
yeah,
the very bottom section, like the bottom couple inches of the pot. If it's a really
right.
big pot versus or cutting a foot into it, like I get that. But when you're cutting away, you know, half of the outside wall,
Mhm.
that's where it's like, there's a lot of clay there.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's beneficial to throw large because you just even if you're like, I don't plan to throw large, but it's just like is a new challenge. Is that kind of where you
Yeah,
think it's
I think it's
beneficial to
good
throw
to like
large?
yeah, I think it's good to stretch yourself for sure. I think that like I was saying earlier, I think that it's great to stretch yourself, but when you are stretching yourself so far that it becomes almost opposite,
Hmm.
that's when you need to like reconsider and be like, okay, maybe 5 pounds is too much. Let's try four,
Yeah.
and by the way, P.S. Just a trick. If you are centering large amounts of clay, what I recommend is centering like a pound at a time. So center the top and then move down, kind of like as a cone.
Hmm.
That's how somebody explained it to me a long time ago, and it's helped quite a bit.
And is
Um,
that so? It's the whole thing is in a cone. You center the top section, and
yeah.
then you're pushing that down.
No, you're just like kind of like centering the top and then moving your hands down a little bit and then centering that next portion and then moving your hands down and then centering that next portion and
Hmm.
then like you keep going
It
down until you
stays
get to the bottom.
gradually. It keeps going gradually wider.
Yeah.
You're just taking
Yeah.
care of it like a whole height of your hand at a time, kind
Right.
of.
Instead of starting at the bottom and being like, I'm going to push
Then
25
it's gonna like
pounds.
whip around
Yeah.
and it's gonna get crazy.
Yeah.
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 Or flatten it down into like a tuna can shape and you're trying to like center the outside. Oh my, that's probably really strenuous and really tough
Yeah.
to.
No, thank you. I was telling somebody recently, I was like, I don't think I'm a really good person to teach how to like throw big pieces because I am pretty strong. So like whenever whenever I'm centering large pieces, I'm just like 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 I don't yeah. Anyway. Um yeah, I think that definitely after a year of like classes, um centering like 2 pounds should be doable. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it should be easy.
It'll be a struggle, but
Yeah, but it
you
should be
should be able
doable.
to do it.
Yeah. And I do think that with like the proper teaching, like the proper amount, like the proper style of teaching for your particular self, um you could move way past that, you know?
Mhm.
Um because everybody has a certain way of learning.
Yeah, it depends if you're more of a, watch a demo, mirror a demo
Right.
versus kind of the feel of it. I feel
Yeah.
like some of the feel of it is intuitive for some people, and some people
Yeah.
don't get that as much.
Right. I think that by year 2, you should be like exploring new shapes. You should be
Beginning of year two,
by year 2, middle of year 2.
middle of
You
year two.
should yeah,
Okay.
bowls, like good bowls, you know? Like
Like cereal bowls? Or you're talking like
cereal
mixing
bowls?
bowls?
No, like cereal bowls, Uh like intentional cereal bowls
Yeah.
instead of unintentional cereal bowls.
Okay.
Like ones with nice curves on the inside that like are smooth. Um, complex shapes, mugs with pulled handles or however handles you want to do.
Quality
Um,
handles.
quality handles. Uh, like no fingerprints, like no fingerprints and like messiness. Um, unless that's your style, then you do you, boo. And
You just have to be, yeah, you have to be conscious of
yeah,
the marks that you're leaving. Don't do it and let it be an afterthought and just be like, "Oh, well, that's what I did." Or
yeah,
don't let the fingerprints go through the bisque kiln and you're like, "Oh, well, it's whatever."
it's whatever. Yeah,
It's like,
no, be
"Oh,
intentional.
I yeah, I
Yeah.
did that on purpose."
Yeah. And I think that Well, and also depends. Like, okay, so that we've got like 1 and 2 years for like that kind of medium throwing style, right? Like, not throwing style, but like being in a class, 90 hours a year. Um, wow, 90 hours a year just does not sound like a lot.
That doesn't
Um,
set that. That's like 2 full weeks of a job, 2.5 weeks of a job,
isn't
of
that
a full-time job.
crazy? Um, as opposed to somebody who like invests and not that you're not investing in classes, you are, but like gets a wheel and throws every single day because they love it so much. So they're throwing 2 hours a day. Let's say 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. My
Math.
math man. 2 hours a
Okay, so
day,
10 hours a week.
10 hours a week. That's
Uh,
520 hours
That's a lot.
520
Wow.
hours a year. At
I feel
that
like 2
point,
hours a day, 5 days a week is kind of a.
is that a lot?
I feel like there's part-time potters that are like making a business of it that probably work that much,
Okay.
like making a little extra income on the side. I feel like
Okay.
2 hours a day, 5 days a week might be a lot. Maybe 2 hours a day, 3 days a week.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay,
Keeping me in check.
it just seems like a lot to me. Okay, yeah, so that's 6 times 52, 312.
312 hours.
312 hours.
Sweet.
Still a good amount.
What do you think about this one? What do you like if and by the way, we should say that you have your individual journey. This is not a measure of how successful you are. It's just what we're
At
kind of
312 hours in, you need to be able to
you
do
need to
this.
know. No, like we're just kind of like seeing what
Spitballing. What we
it's
think is
just like a
accomplishable
guide.
in that time.
Yeah, just a guide. So, even though we're not experts. Um, what do you think?
I feel like you're severely limited being in your own space.
Mm,
Like, if you don't have those 90 hours with an instructor in the room and other peers in the room, I think it helps to see how other people are, whether they challenge you to do a little bit better or you get ideas of, I don't know, it depends on how you learn too. Like, if you learn from watching other people do their stuff,
yeah.
and you're like, oh, I'm going through this problem. This is what I do. And then, the your peers bounce ideas of like, this is what I did to fix that. Or you ask the teacher and you actually have some way to get feedback and
Mm-hmm.
guide yourself. If it's a very one-sided thing and you can only look at YouTube videos,
Right. Like you're
it,
learning on your own.
it's going to be the 312 hours is, you know, I would say, do you have an equivalent hour that you would, hour, uh, in class hours that you would kind of equate that to? I would probably say it'd be more like, I don't say everybody's gonna get less like good instruction or whatever on
Yeah.
their own, but I would say it's probably closer to like, I don't know, 225 hours worth of class time for like
Yeah.
300, or maybe a little
Yeah.
bit
I
less class.
definitely think there's like for sure a learning curve that happens. Like I learned pretty much on my own in college. Um, but I was there a lot, you know? And I did have a few people that were like, "Hey, you should do this, you should do this." Not that I listened. But yeah, and then once I got into like a class setting, my skills like improved exponentially. Um, like
What was that
after a
from?
couple of
Was that
years.
seeing others working, or was it because you had the ear of a teacher close by?
I think it was both. I think it was like watching and like seeing everybody's pieces and like seeing what I liked. And not that I didn't have that in college, I did, but we were all students, you know?
Hmm.
Like I didn't know who was good. And my college wasn't necessarily like top notch as far as ceramics is concerned. But, but, yeah, like once I got into like a production pottery setting, I was like, oh, that's what I should expect, you know? And then like asking for critiques and being like, hey, can you tell me what's wrong with this? And, yeah, that definitely helps. So I would say after like a year of doing it on your own, oof, that's hard because one one incorrect instruction on your own can totally like change your whole direction. You know, like I
Because you
knit,
keep
yeah,
going and making that, I want to say
yeah,
mistake, but you keep going down that path
right. Because like
over
I
and over and
knitted,
over, and there's nobody there
yeah,
to help you.
yeah. I learned how to knit on my own, and I knitted wrong for 4 years, like like backwards, kind of for
Oh,
4 years until I went to like a knitting store and somebody was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" like, but you know, so you can like do something wrong and it feels right, like,
I feel like that's a song or something.
right. Yeah, but I would say even with that, I would say after a year of like doing it pretty frequently, I think you're almost at the same. I think you're almost at the same
A
space
year on your own versus a year.
in classes.
Oh, so you're saying the 312 hours on your own is equivalent to like 100 hours of class time?
I think so.
Okay. I was being a little generous with the 200 hours of class time. That would be 2 years worth.
Yeah.
But okay.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, it depends on how you're learning. Like
yeah, it does.
if you do kind of watch YouTube videos and watch instructional videos that are in depth, and you're analyzing yourself and breaking down what you're doing and
Yeah.
actually looking at it um in with a critical eye.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you're kind of experimenting. I feel like
Yeah. For
you're
sure.
learning how to make certain things, and there's not like a curriculum you're going by or a syllabus or
Right.
these are the things that we're going to learn in this period of time. It's totally up to you.
Yeah. I'm thinking of like a really good example, and I'm sorry, Lindy, but I'm going to call you out. Lindy, Garner Ceramics, when I met her on the interwebs, she was only doing slab work and she had these like wonderful slab vases. And so I got one. And then she started throwing shortly after that. And that was in like 2019, I think. And we're in 2022. So
Hmm.
3 years. And like the progression, like she's not, I think she's done a few classes, but mostly it's been like watching online, doing YouTube. She has her own wheel. She sells her stuff. And um like the improvement has been crazy, crazy good. And then I was also thinking about somebody else who over, I want to say it's been 2 years and she's throwing significantly better, but she never took really any classes and she did it all on her own and it's been a struggle bus, but she's finally there. Like
What
it's
do you think
almost
incentivizes you to do better? Is it when you get your pieces out in front of customers, or like
maybe.
is it just you have to have a critical eye and like
Yeah.
say this needs to be a little bit better here, a little bit better there?
Yeah, I think so. And also like reaching out to other people, but also I think that there's like some point where you're like this makes sense. Like, you know, like there's like 8 months in you're like, "Oh."
Hmm.
Like that it clicks, you know?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to do with making sure you get those reps on specific forms. Being
Mhm.
intentional about what forms you're making, going to the wheel with I'm going to make mugs today
Yeah.
and just sticking to it. Not not saying let the clay guide me where it will.
Right.
Because if you go into the making a piece without a plan and you're like going to center and then you're going to pull and then you're like, oh well it's the cylinder but it's kind of going outward, so let's make this one a bowl. Like
Yeah.
you're not really in control there. You're kind of going by the whims of whatever your hands end up doing.
Right. Yeah. Um
And you can't be like, oh well, the reason that one went wrong, maybe I was going a little bit too fast on that
yeah.
pull and it was going outward. Oh, okay. Maybe I didn't have enough water and it, drag had a little bit more drag on it or something, or kind of
Right.
torqued a little bit.
Yeah. It's crazy to me. I naturally do this, but I have been noticing that because pottery is such a relaxing thing, once you finally get it, once you finally like mostly get it, it's relaxing. Will you? Oh my god. Sorry, I'm having cat issues today.
Lloyd.
um, I, I,
He's
okay.
right in the camera.
Once you like finally get it, you zone out and then you forget about improving almost. So it's like I almost feel like once you get to a point, there's not a lot of progression after that point, just because now it's become like comfortable and relaxing and you're like, meh, like I'm just gonna spend 15 minutes at the wheel and throw this pot and it's gonna be great. So you're not actually thinking about improving, you're thinking about like, this is so
Maintaining.
fun. Yeah, this is really fun. And it's not, and if you just pay attention, like if you film yourself and just pay attention and look at what you've done, you'll learn like exponentially just by watching yourself. And because I think that we all know the steps, like you see it so often, especially if you're on the Instagram world. You see the steps so very frequently that like we know them. We're just maybe like, like,
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can also become like, hey, customers like this, so
oh yeah,
what do I need to improve? But and I would say you don't always have to be looking to improve every single thing
oh
every
no, no,
single
no,
day.
no,
Like
no,
it's good to get to a point where you can maintain and build in that consistency. I think that gives you confidence so that you can
yeah,
build a quality product, get it out to customers, as well as give yourself more leeway to take risks elsewhere or experiment with another form that you're not as comfortable with. I still
yeah,
make some forms that I'm like, it, these are just not exactly where I want them to be. There's
yeah,
something missing here, or there's, and like the shallow pasta bowls I throw, like they're still a little bit on the fence for me. Like, I like them a
mm-hmm,
little bit, but not a ton. Like they're wide flat bottom. Like, I don't know. And maybe the solution is maybe I just need to add a quarter pound more clay and get them a little
right,
bit bigger, and it might be a better shape that I'm happy with. But you know, I still get them out to customers and sell them, and still make them to keep them in stock a little bit. But I'm not as excited about making them
yeah,
because the end product I'm just not as proud of in the end.
yeah,
But I think throwing new forms in there here and there helps keep me a little bit more in that learner mindset
mm-hmm,
from like a customer perspective of, I think getting feedback from customers helps guide some of that
mm-hmm,
improvement because I hear feedback about the functionality of it or, the look of a certain thing or
yeah.
whatnot. But yeah, that's kind of where I think about the improvement for myself nowadays. Um, yeah.
When do you think you should start selling? I know we've asked this like many times, but like at
Are we talking hours?
as far as like a technical standpoint, when do you think you should start like when do you think you could start selling and feel comfortable with it? Like,
I think one benchmark that I would say is when you put in pots into a kiln and you're very confident that what's going to come out of that kiln is going to look like what you expect it to look like. Maybe
mm,
that's a good barometer
that
where
is a good barometer.
you're not shocked by what comes out because you put in the work, you know how to apply glazes, you know how to throw a form, you know how to, you know, load your kiln so you don't blow the bottoms out of pots or
Right.
where you glaze something, you expect a certain result, you open the kiln, you get that result. I think that's a good barometer to say,
That's a great
I'm
barometer.
confident in selling this pot.
Yeah. And it's something you're happy with.
Yeah.
Can you
I mean,
still
sure,
hear
you'll get a little
Charles?
variation here and there of like the glaze running a little bit differently, but yeah. What'd you say?
Can you hear Charles?
No.
Oh, that's so sad. I'm gonna have to move down to the studio. I've been doing the podcast in my apartment and you can't hear Charles.
Oh no.
Um, anyway, I think that's a great barometer. I would say, when would I start selling stuff? Not when I did start selling stuff, I can tell you that. Um,
Do
I
you
would,
think you should start? Do you think still being in a class, you should sell stuff?
well, it depends on how you use that class. You know, some people use a class as a kiln, and some people use a class as a learning device,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah,
So,
and it depends on where you're. I, I'm also kind of thinking of like a Baker Hunt. They have beginner, intermediate, advanced, open studio.
okay,
Like, do you think there's a level? It's Do you
to
think there's a
sell.
level that would like be a good like baseline of when you could start selling, or
I so struggle with this question, and I think that's why I asked it. And I know we're like totally getting off the subject, but I kind of hope that would happen anyway.
Mhm.
But it's still a very valid topic. I think you should start selling when I don't think the class situation matters.
Mhm.
You know, I know people that have been in classes for years just because they like the
But
classes.
they could use it as more of an open studio to
Right.
that point.
Yeah, at that point, I would say you can start selling once you've tested, you know how to test your pieces
Mhm.
properly. Once you understand the chemistry,
The
like
chemistry of what? The
just
glazes or like vitrification or
vitrification and just like
what happens to a
what,
pot
yeah,
when you bisque fire it and
yeah, like just basic stuff that I think is fundamental only because when you're selling stuff, those questions come up, you know, and you're going to need to answer them. Uh, but also, I think that I'm not going to say like pot quality because as we've discussed all the time, it doesn't matter. Um,
Mhm. I mean your
our,
price can inform
yeah,
whether people are willing to buy it or not.
yeah. But I would say that you should start selling when you have a consistent, I think consistency is something that I would want before I would start selling.
Consistency in the quality of pieces or the
Yes.
array of forms or the colors or
Yes, that's
all
a
of
good
it.
question. All of it, but specifically the quality and the like forms.
Like being able to reproduce the same thing.
Yeah, not exactly the same thing, but like something of the sort. Like if you're producing different shapes, then you're keeping it fairly similar styles painted, you know. Like so that you're not all over the place. You
Hmm.
know, being all over the place, I think, only hurts you when you are selling.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
From a customer like busyness perspective, like it's hard
Yeah.
for them to grasp what they like because they have
Yeah,
to
and it's just
stumble
like,
upon something.
well, and it's not as pleasing to the eyes. It's like I've been there. Oh my god. I've been there. And yeah, it's just like you feel like you're all over the place, you know?
Yeah, I think sometimes I get thrown off if people are like, "How would you describe your style?" And I'm like, "How do I describe my style? Quality pieces, like
Consistent.
or if somebody was like, what's your where do you get your inspiration for your color schemes?" And I'm like, I just find colors that I like that I think pair well together. Like, and I still think that my colors are busy because there's so many combos that I do. But some people like look at the booth and they're like, I just love all your colors, I think. And then I'll be like, oh, well, I feel like I have a lot of color combos. It's hard for me to feel like I'm in a certain scheme. And then people are like, no, it's like the whole vignette or something of like a certain look.
I think your shapes
I can't like
are
describe
what's
the look,
consistent,
but
you know?
yeah. Yeah, it's hard. I I don't think you have to answer that question before you can sell, but
Oh, no.
it's I mean it's still something I struggle with because I don't know, like functional, something you'd use every day. Like that's normally what I say.
I think what I do think, and I think you should sell just randomly, like going to different shows or small things, gatherings and stuff whenever you can. But I think also the distinction, I guess, too, is sell to make a profit or sell because you have these pieces, Like if you're
Yeah.
selling, like, yeah, this is a hobby. Like I'm just putting these out on the table. Do whatever the fuck
You're
you want.
yeah, you're trying to
Like,
get rid of stock so that you can
yeah, like do
remove
what you
some of
want. But if you're like,
storage.
yeah, if you're going for a goal, if your goal is like, if your goal is like, I want to make pottery for a living, then thought needs to go into that
Mhm.
process and like being very mindful of the way that you're doing things.
And it sounds like the whole business side, the doing it for a business long term, you'd kind of want to take it seriously in that you you're responsible for the pots that you put out
Yeah. Yeah.
and the quality of it and the when you get those questions about do these glazes have lead in them?
Can these go in the microwave?
Yeah.
Like, instead of just saying yes because somebody told you yes, you need to know why they can go in the microwave,
Hmm.
Like, oh, they can go in the microwave because their their porosity is low enough that there's no water that gets into them, and when they go in the microwave the water jiggles and then it moves around, and if it moves around and if they soak up all the water and it moves around, then that's when they break. Like
Hmm.
that is something that you need to know.
And I'm looking up that episode where we talk about testing your glazes.
Yeah. This has kind of been like a
It's
crazy
way back there.
oof.
Something about food safety. I think it was a short episode that we did.
I think it was. It was like a 30-minute episode.
Oh man.
I remember when we filmed it because I was doing like research on the
Mm-hmm.
computer.
Is your work food safe? 94S.
94S.
And I think we talked about it a little bit with Josh.
Yeah.
Time. I think 36 might have been Josh or something like that. I did have a couple more questions to ask. As you're learning, when do you think it's beneficial to start making more advanced forms? So I'm thinking vase, pitcher, teapot, jars, those kind of things it takes practice with the smaller forms to get to a point
Mhm.
where you can start putting pieces together, like making a spout for something or putting a handle on a bigger form or things like that where it's multifaceted of the
I
skills that you need to
think
put together.
when you're learning you should do that as quickly as possible. Like not in a big scale, but like attaching things. Like try to make a teapot when you can throw a pound and a half clay, Like
Because
why the hell
you can
not?
make a body of a teapot with a pound and a half,
Easy. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a
even
big
if
teapot.
you're not the greatest at getting use of all the clay that you can use.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
a
a
small teapot.
teapot it literally puts all of your skills to test. Like, can you make a lid? Can you make a spout? Can you make a handle? Like,
And there's a
boom.
lot of different ways you can do each of those things.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
lids, you can throw them off the hump. You can throw it directly on the wheel. You can
Yeah.
hand build it. You can
Ooh.
throw it as a solid form and cut it, you know, closed form,
Yeah. And then cut it.
cut it. Same thing with a jar. You can do a lot of different ways to do a jar and do the gallery for it to sit on.
Yeah.
Do you think they should throw a jar before they throw a teapot? Make a
Sure.
teapot?
Yeah. What would be the progression of things, do you think?
I think you
Cylinder,
should.
mug.
No, cylinder mug. Yeah. Bowl.
Oh, hiccups. Cylinder, mug. Well, like to get to a teapot. So it'd be like a
Oh,
cylinder, a mug, a pitcher,
Are you talking about from day one?
No, no, like let's
Where they need
say,
to get skilled, they need to get skilled in these forms before they get to the teapot. Is that what you're saying?
yeah,
Or
potentially, yeah,
competent
or
in those
at least
forms?
like try them, you know. So
Yeah.
what you need to do a cylinder, you need to do a mug, you need to do a pitcher,
I would
just
say a
because.
vase. You could say
Oh,
vase
a
before pitcher.
vase before pitcher, and then pitcher. I like pitcher because it gives you a larger handle, and also you have to figure out how to do the spout.
I like
Not
the
that it's
vase
the
because
same.
you can play around with the belly of it
So true. And that like
and
teaches you
knowing how
about
to
shape.
like neck things in.
Yeah. And then a jar, lidded jar.
Hmm.
And then I think at that point you're like set.
Yeah. I would say get some mugs under your belt for sure because you
For
need
sure.
the handles. You're gonna have to go through some shitty looking mugs,
Do you think
shitty looking
everybody
handles.
should learn how to pull a handle?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, sure. I think you should learn the different options you have. Um,
Yeah.
don't just rely on slab building handles if that's all you know. I think
Right.
you should learn to throw it off the big carrot and pull, off the big carrot, pull the
Pull the
handles, put them
carrot.
on a board, let them dry,
Yeah.
slip and score them, get them on the mug because you can get a lot of different shapes of handles, and then you just toss the ones that you don't like and you keep the ones that you do like. And
Yeah.
I think that gives you the reps that you need. It takes a good amount of skill to be able to pull it. It takes skill to just pull it directly off the mug as it is, but you have to know what you're going for and have the motions correct before, it's kind of like you got one shot here.
Do not miss your chance to
You got one shot,
shot.
one opportunity. Seize everything you ever wanted. One moment. I think that's what you're going for, but you had the words wrong.
No, there's one. You got one shot. Do not miss your chance to go, because opportunity goes within a lifetime.
That's the same song.
It is the same song, but we were at different parts. I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, one
Anyway,
shot, one opportunity is the very beginning.
yeah. Okay. Here's a question. This is fun. I like what this has turned into. This is fun. Do you? What do you think is the hardest basic shape? Mug, plate, bowl. Right? Those are our basic shapes, right?
Basic
Mug,
shape,
plate,
as
bowl.
in like a smooth side and
Yeah. Like a nice fucking bowl, like a good cereal bowl,
I think a
with a
plate for sure.
curved, or a plate. I also think a plate. Plates
A
are
plate.
tough.
I There's a lot of ways that it can. I think the learning how to. It depends on how much weight you're working with, but I think the centering process is a little odd because
Mm-hmm.
you're centering and getting it so low.
Low.
There's some ways that it can go off and it could not be on center.
Yeah.
And if you don't have your hands in a good strong position, it can be tough.
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty simple at the end of the day, as long as you get it the right width and then you just prop up the side, just give it a little bit of a
Yeah.
lift, and it's got a lip. If you have to pull a lip, it's a little bit more work, but
Yeah.
you have to be really skilled in your centering capabilities
For
with
sure.
like a medium amount of clay. Like what's a small plate? I would say you would need at least 2 pounds probably for a small plate.
Like an 8-inch plate.
Um, are you gonna trim a foot into it or
I was
keep it
just gonna
flat?
say that. Yeah. I would say if you're
For
doing a high foot, 2 pounds for an 8-inch plate.
Yeah. I don't know that would get 8 inches for a noob.
2.5 pounds for an 8-inch plate.
Okay.
Yeah, because I do 3 pounds for a 10-inch plate. I
Yeah,
might
I
do
don't
two
throw. I haven't
actually.
thrown plates in a long time, but I used to throw plates in 3 pounds and 5 pounds,
Yeah.
and 5 pounds would go basically like 14-inch wet.
Okay. Yeah, wet. Yeah, and also like I feel like plates. Oh my God, plates and like the cutting off process is absolutely insane.
Yeah,
I've
there's a lot of
never
risk
cut
for
off a plate.
fucking that up.
I've never cut off a plate, and I don't know why I've been blessed with like the plate popping off, but I don't know why. But I
I
never was taught
always
to.
cut off a plate.
Yeah, I know, and I don't get it. I don't get it. Like,
Have you always kept them flat though? You just trim off the outside edge. Is that accurate? you never trim an inner foot when you're letting them pop off. Is that right?
I usually trim like a tiny little inner thing just so that it's not.
But you're not going in and trimming out like an eighth of an inch
I mean, I
and
have.
keeping a foot ring,
I have.
and
But
that's popped off the bat.
yeah, like I said, I've never cut off.
What bats are you throwing on for that, by the way?
I throw on masonite bats, and
Masonite. Okay.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
It's
mean
just
that's a big factor because I feel like I always throw plates on plastic bats.
okay.
I almost never throw them on masonite bats, but mainly because the masonite bats that I've had have been secondhand. They've been used, and the
And
holes don't
shitty.
normally
Yeah.
match up the perfect way,
Yeah.
and they're not always the flattest.
Yeah. For
So
sure.
making it that wide on a not flat bat that is rocking in the
Yeah.
bat pins, like I feel like you're not going to get the best quality plate out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why. Like I also feel like I can't speak to people cutting off plates. Like they're like, "How do you do this?" And I'm like, "You know what? I don't even fucking know. I don't
I
know.
think
I
the bat has
can't."
a lot to do with it.
I think it does, and also I always put in like that little ridge around so it's a hard cut.
Hmm.
So it's like
You don't have a bunch of slop and
not
around
a
the
lot of
bottom edge and
slop.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here's an opinion. I have an opinion though. I think that the plate's the hardest thing to make, but I think a bowl is the hardest thing to make well.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think there's a wait. You also said mug as
Yeah.
well.
Mug.
I think there's some intricacies to a mug if
Like the
we're
handle.
keeping the handle in there
Yeah.
that I, I don't know. The thing about the handle is there's a lot of customers that'll buy things that are not the best quality handle, but that's also kind of subjective. But
Oh, handles are very subjective. Yeah.
um, I don't know. I just feel like there's some things with the handles that but you have to have an eye for like I want to make this a little bit better. I don't know. I do agree with the bowl though. I mean, I still have a little less confidence in some of the bowls. Like when I see some of your bowls and you're like, yeah, you got to have a nice smooth inside curve. Like I've heard that, but I've always like
Your
dismissed that a
bowls are
little bit.
different. Your bowls are different though. They don't have that curve like on
Yeah.
purpose.
I'm more focused on the outside side of the bowl.
Yeah.
I'm more about like, is it the height and width I like? But also
Right.
you could play around. Like I can throw bowls today and throw bowls next week, and they might not be exactly the same curve. Like
Right.
I'm not as like specific about that, but
Yeah.
um, I can see where it's harder for me to reproduce a bowl I made a year and a half ago or a year ago.
Yeah. I just think like I remember loving making bowls when I was in college, and then when I actually learned how to like really throw, I remember hating bowls. Like like hating making them because they were so hard to make well, you know? And I've finally gotten good at it, but it's just definitely one of those things where it's just like oof. It
And
can
I'm not even
go
trimming feet on bowls. I would
right.
it does get kind of hard to make sure the feet are good as well. If you are trimming feet,
Yeah.
um, you have to have a good eye for how thick you can, how much you can trim away.
Mhm.
That definitely takes some practice,
Yeah.
and it's easy to just mail it in a little bit, but also like I say mail it in. I don't know if that's the right words, but it's easy to just stop at a point where you could go
Oh,
further if you push yourself,
yeah. Yeah.
and you're just like, it's fine. Like I don't
It's
want to risk cutting through the bowl.
yeah. It needs a little bottom weight anyway.
Yeah, you'll explain it away by saying that, and it's like it's true, but you also yeah.
Yeah.
And all my bowls are flat on the bottom, so unless it's a
Yeah.
berry bowl, but
I think having bowls that are flat on the bottom are fine. I did when I was selling those mixing bowls, that's the only time that I was like, "Ooh." And the
because it's
reason
so
why
big.
no, it was because when they stack. Like if I was selling them individually, fine. whatever. But when they stack, the that like hard edge around on the bottom, if it's not like curvy, it like scratches it and like it just hits it kind of hard. That's what I didn't like.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I'm a little I'm a little iffy about the stackability of bowls sometimes too, because I'm like,
yeah.
oh, my bowls don't stack as nice as they could. But I'm like,
Yeah.
ultimately, I'm like, it's fine.
Mm, yeah.
Because I can see when I look at batches, I'm like, when I throw them, I'm throwing them as little series at a time. Like I'm throwing series of 12 bowls
Right.
this day. Like this is my August 10th batch of bowls that I made, and I can tell there's a little bit different. And then if I looked at like an August 20th batch of bowls that I made, like they're not going to be exactly the same. They might not pair as well
Yeah.
with the ones I made on the other date. Um, but yeah, yeah. And I could get a little bit better about like, using a certain tool to do I don't know, the tool that's like the depth and the width thing
Oh
with the
yeah, yeah.
bamboo. Like I could do something like that, or a gauge or something. But I'm like, I feel like it wouldn't be as fun for me to do that.
Yeah. Ugh.
Um,
Why is pottery so hard? Like,
or are we just over analyzing so much and it's like, dude,
no,
just
it's
have fun.
really hard. It's like hard to make really good pottery, you know? Like, this is not easy, also. Just for everybody out there listening, what we're doing isn't easy.
And what
Like,
you're doing isn't easy.
yeah, what you're doing, like if you're a potter, what you're doing is not easy. It's like hard. It's really hard.
I love it when I get the date night people in there and they're like, I always end the class with asking them like, okay, what was your favorite part? What was the
Yeah.
hardest part? You know, stuff like that. And I think, what do you think the hardest part for a day one beginner would be? Like in throwing, let's say they're throwing a bowl.
Um, with a lot of help or a little help?
It's a 2-hour class, so little help.
Little help. Walls.
The pulls.
The
Ultimately,
poles.
I feel like I usually get the pulls.
Yeah.
With the getting the wall up, and it's
Yeah.
a lot of it comes back. And these are day one beginners, so it's kind of hard to
Yeah.
compare. But usually, it's their pieces aren't centered. As
Mhm.
they get further in the process, their pieces get off center,
Yeah.
and it's hard to say. Centering is important because as you get throughout the process, it gets more and more difficult to do
Right.
the next step if it's not centered. So, me coming over there and you saying, well, when I pull, like this thing's all, like you were talking about your bowl that's like a shell shape. It's like really wide on one side and really
And yeah,
like vertical on the other side. It's like, how do I fix this? It's like
you don't.
you kind of call it a day and be happy that you got a finished piece out of it
Yeah.
and you make another one. That's kind of what you do. But um yeah, I think
Like that's why I started on my class in my classes. That's why I started making pots for trimming day. Like making two pieces for
oh yeah, you
each
mentioned that
student.
before.
Yeah, like I always used to make two pieces for each student and they'd be leather hard by the time that they got to class because without fail, it's like you are literally you're like literally just handing them failure on a platter when they are trimming the pots that they made their first class ever. Like,
Because it's not level on the
yeah,
top.
it's not level, like nothing's
It's not a
happening.
clean
And you're
cut at the
just like,
base.
and they have no concept of what is supposed to be good,
What it
you
should feel
know?
like, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, that's why I just started giving them two because I was like, you know what? Start with these. These are good, they're centered.
hmm
They are, this is I want you to feel what it feels like to run through the middle of this pot, trim it to its death, but I want you to feel like what it feels like to trim a centered pot. And then we will trim your pots that are not centered, that will be difficult. You know, it's just so,
It's
such a
hard because you're
cruel
like,
joke.
what do I do here? How do I trim the bottom? And it's like, well, your bottom's not flat for one
Yeah.
because your rim's not flat. So you're dealing with this like,
So you have to put clay under the rim so that you can prop it up, and then it starts wiggling. And it's just oof. Anyway, if you're a teacher, I recommend it. 10 out of 10.
that's a great idea. Do you think it's beneficial? And this kind of goes back to the throwing for noobs, but do you think it would be beneficial if people come in fresh and you center the pot for them?
No.
No, you kind of want to get the whole experience with the centering. I mean, sometimes if they're really fucking it up, I'll just go over there and I'll recenter it real quick,
Yeah. Yeah.
just to like keep them moving through the process. Not their very first pot, but
Right. I definitely not the first pot. I think it's really important to let them completely screw up the first pot. Um, but then I think that after that, on like pot 2 and 3, if they're not getting it centered, using your hands over their hands to center the clay so they know what it feels like is
yeah,
helpful.
yeah, it's tough with and usually I do, I do the spiel with familiarizing yourself with the wheel and the speed and like
Yeah.
getting as close as you can,
Yeah.
using your legs to help support your arm and your elbow and the splash pan so that you get a good like strong
I
like
feel like teaching centering is the hardest thing for me to teach.
yeah, just because I think everybody's body's different and the
Yeah.
amount having them understand the amount of force,
Yeah.
because you'll get people that I'll say like the left pushes it in and it goes up, and then the right you karate chop down on the top to push it down. So it's like a balance between pressure of side and top.
Right. And I
And
don't teach that way anymore. I don't do the karate chop anymore. Um, but that's because I'm not teaching newbies.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, even like with the consultations that I've been doing, that's been my biggest struggle is the centering. Like if somebody comes in and they are struggling with centering, that's the hardest thing for me to verbally communicate.
What do you teach? Cone up, come down?
I teach cone up, cone down, yeah, but I teach different hand motions.
Okay.
I teach mostly with your left hand and like using your thumb to push down
Okay.
instead of your
From a
right hand.
cone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I feel like coning is a little bit much for a day one beginner.
well, I teach coning on beginner, but like the knob at the top is like
Yeah.
unavoidable.
Yeah. I had another question. So it depends on where you're at in here, but let's say you're a year in. Do you think the tools that you're using make much of a difference?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think so. Um,
Do you think it's better to focus on the bare I think it's beneficial to focus on the bare minimum
I
tools that you
agree.
need and not bogging yourself down with I have a foot tool, a foot fetish tool that's going to give me the foot I need.
Is that what they're called? Foot fetish?
That's what Dirty Girl Pottery Tools calls them, foot
Oh, that's
fetish.
funny. Um,
I think
um,
I'm pretty sure that's what they call them, foot fetish tools.
that would make sense knowing Link. I think, yeah, I mean, I try to teach as little tools as possible. I definitely think sponges are a security blanket, like
For
100%.
what? For poles or
Yep, for
for
poles, for everything, like, um, you
water
know,
content?
water content, and I'm okay with it as a security blanket, but I definitely like when I see a sponge being used, I'm like,
Feel attacked here, Becca.
yeah,
I'm a sponge puller.
I do. Well, it's like there's nothing wrong with having it. It's just that I do think it's like this security blanket that's like I am invincible with the sponge.
Yeah. I think
um,
I can see the benefit of using just your hands because you can feel the thickness of the clay better. Is that kind of
yeah.
why you're a proponent of just using your hands for pulls, for instance?
Yeah, and I don't know why that is actually, because my teacher, Larry Bruning, he was a sponge holder. Like he held a sponge out so he could squeeze it and always get it wet.
Hmm.
Which I do when I'm throwing large, but not when I'm throwing small at all.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I just could never like hold it with like the outside fingers. I just couldn't get. I can't.
Hmm. I mean, I wear the sponges down pretty good, but
Yeah,
and it depends. Like if I use those really puffy sponges that you've got that I've
yeah.
started getting, I the thing is I use them with my speckled clay, which is probably not the best because they're
Oh
very
yeah, those will wear him
absorbent
down.
and I'm
Yeah,
pulling. It's not wearing it down, but it absorbs so much of the moisture from the clay as I'm pulling
yeah,
because it's very absorbent that it adds a little more torque. So I have to be a little bit more cautious of
yeah,
how long I'm pulling
yeah,
and the speed of the wheel. Make sure I have enough water on there
yeah.
because I will get a little bit of torque and whatnot while I'm doing that.
I definitely 155,000% think that cutting off the excess clay at the bottom of your pot is the biggest handicap ever.
How much
Like,
clay are you talking here? You're talking about
uh,
the where you take the wooden knife and you
knife
like
and cut in
slice,
and then cut it and then cut it off. Yeah, and you have like
cutting it with a knife and then using the needle tool underneath to
a
cut.
half an inch rope all the way around your pot. That
I think people get bigger ropes than that.
Yeah, true. That is 150% avoidable, not unavoidable, avoidable.
You need to be pulling that into the walls.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that that is like a huge crutch, you know? Especially for noobs, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean like I get it and I like by all means use it, but
This goes to your bowl thing earlier where you were saying when you throw a 5 pound bowl and it should be 3 pounds in the end. You
yeah.
shouldn't be cutting off pounds of clay like that. Like that is
Right.
cutting off huge chunks of clay.
Yeah.
And
That
don't
aren't
say that you intended to
necessary.
do that. Like you're
Yeah.
doing that
So
because that's what it should look like in the end. But
yeah. I think ribs are great. However, I think
I'm feeling attacked here, Becca. You're saying everything I use. Sponge puller. I mean, I do cut away at the bottom, but it's not that much waste.
no, you don't cut that much waste off. No, I think ribs are great. I
Ribbing the
do
fuck out
think
of it.
that they tend to hide mistakes, which,
What do you mean?
like in the beginning, you get like a little wiggle and you're like, it's fine.
Oh, like
I'll just rib that out.
it kind of uses it kind of like as a trimming method, sort
Right,
of
right,
to
right.
cut
Which is
away
fine.
and
Totally.
level out the
Yeah,
spots that are a little bit
totally
weird.
fine. I think that obviously people that use ribs because their pots are smooth,
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that. There's
yeah.
absolutely nothing wrong with that. Um,
I'm
but
more
in
of the rib that I use. I mostly use it to
texture,
I
right?
use it at like a kind of at a perpendicular motion instead of
Yeah,
at a parallel. I'm
yeah.
sure some people, if they're smoothing pots, they're using it more parallel where it's
Mhm.
smoothing the pot and kind of burnishing it versus I'm using it to scrape.
Yeah, yeah. Um, let's see what else. What other tools are there?
I would.
That
What about like needle tool? What are your feelings on needle tools? I had this. Okay, so I was at back in high school. I took a class during summer break, winter break, whatever, at Thrown Together in Louisville, and there was this guy named Wes. I can't remember his last name. It's an older gentleman. He's probably like an old head potter, right?
Mhm.
He was like a get the fuck out of here with the needle tool kind of
Dude,
guy.
I'm
And he
almost
was
there.
and he he was like, if you're making pots and I'm teaching you, I'm not gonna allow you to use a needle tool. So he was kind of like where you'd say like it's a crutch. It's like you need to know what you're doing so that you don't need to use a needle tool. That's kind of where he was with it.
I literally got blocked by somebody on Instagram because I told them, I won't say the gender. I told them that using a needle tool was a crutch. And she told me I was being ableist. And I was like, just learn how to
Was
throw better.
the were you were you in a spot where they were asking for feedback or you didn't like unsolicit?
No, I had a
Wasn't
video. I think I
unsolicited.
had a video that was like, you shouldn't be using a needle tool. If you can throw a pot correctly, you shouldn't be
Oh, I
using a
got you.
needle
It was
tool.
your video, and
It
they
was
were in your
my
space.
video. Yeah, and they were in my space and then they blocked me.
Okay.
Um, but I think that I do teach people how to cut pieces with the needle tool if needed. Ha ha, pun intended. Um, but I strongly discourage it. The reason being, if you compress your rim, if you pull evenly, you shouldn't need it.
Right.
Also, pun intended. And the only time that I'm really like, hey, use your needle tool is if you are going for a specific height and you pull too high. Then there's literally nothing you can do. Cut
Right.
it off.
You can't like compress it back down.
No. Um,
Don't be a
so
tool. You don't need it.
don't be a tool you don't need. Can that be a shirt?
And then underline it with a needle tool.
Yes.
Underline
Uh,
the word need with the needle tool.
yes.
Or use like the tool as one of the letters or something.
Yeah.
The T in tool.
Yeah, no, I know that, and I have a needle tool in my sponge, but that was because I cut it off. I cut off my pieces off the hump with the needle tool. But yeah, needle tools and me, I'm not a fan. What do you think? Are you?
I pretty much only use them for bottles, and I
Oh,
don't
I think they're necessary for that
I
kind of
don't
stuff.
yeah, I don't know that there's the number of times that I use needle tools for the bottles is probably 7 out of 10.
Yeah, good.
I almost have to. I mean,
I'm
it's kind
glad
of
you said
unavoidable.
that because I do feel like that's the exception. Is the what's it collaring to a very
Yeah.
narrow from a wide can and is almost always uneven.
I'm finding that there's certain ways that I can collar it in,
Yeah.
and I think it has to do with the having multiple points of contact so that it's very
Hmm.
even.
Yeah.
I feel like the finger method where you're just using like index finger and or middle finger and thumb to collar it
Hmm.
in is more conducive to getting that kind of
Right.
undulating
I
rim.
try to use like the insides of my
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
what's like
It's
when
more
you
of
make an
like
L, when you make an L with your hands for people that aren't watching. When you make an L with your hands, like the inside curve of
yes,
the L, that's what I use to kind of like compress.
yeah, and I kind of cone it like where my hands
Yeah.
are covering it.
And also your poles need to be really even before that. Like they can't be, we throw with like heavy throwing rings. You have to throw with a little tighter throwing rings when you get to the top, or
Yes,
else they'll be off a little
and you
bit.
need to make
So,
sure you leave enough clay at the top so that you can neck it in and it's not gonna fold in on itself.
exactly. Like, yeah, definitely collaring and needle tools are pretty synonymous.
Necessary, yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely the exception.
Yeah,
Um,
that's really the only time I use it.
and like making plates, like when I make slab plates, I have to cut it off with a needle tool, but that's just,
Yeah.
but
Um,
what else?
I think that's the tools. What other like basic tools? What do you feel about what do you feel about like bowl ribs and stuff like that?
Oh, for the inside or the outside?
The inside.
Eh, I mean,
Like coconut ribs or the let's say like Garrity has the bowls, the
hmm
profile, the inside bowl ones.
I mean, it's a tool. Use it, right? If it's making your pieces consistent. I use a rib. I've been using those Garrity unfoot ribs on the outside for my bowls, and they've been great. You
So
know.
it's actually the whole profile of the bowl or it's
Hmm.
for the foot?
No, it's like the whole profile. I wish they were wider. Like I wish that he would have made a few that went out.
Hmm.
So it wasn't the whole
So it's
profile of
more
the
of a
bowl.
Y shape instead of
Yeah, but
a U shape.
yeah. But yeah, I've been using those for like the small pinch pots that I've been doing,
Okay.
and they've been great. I have accepted a lot more tools as
Yeah,
I've grown up.
I think the bowl tool, the outside profile bowl tool, I feel like I'm more forgiving of that because
Mm,
it's not for me. It's not something that you're gonna see in somebody's pieces and you're like, that's the Garrity bowl V1 tool. Like
Right.
versus somebody that makes like GR pottery form plates, and I'm like, that's the GR pottery form.
Yeah. Except
plate.
for that one zigzaggy tool, that one zigzag rib. Like Rebecca got one. And I was like, really? Everybody is throwing those
Are you
right
talking
now.
about the ones that's like it actually puts the like bumps on the outside? Like ribbed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which honestly don't care. It's just like a lawn pottery like stencil or
Transfer.
whatever those transfer. It's like everybody's like, of course everybody's gonna use them. They're available to everybody.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think ribs are great if you know how to throw.
Is it just like taking a good pot and just pushing it up that like
Yeah,
extra, like it's a, let's say it's an 80% pot and it just pushes it up that like extra
yeah,
10% or 5%?
totes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Why have we never done a tools
I don't know,
episode?
probably because you'd shit on every company that we talk about.
That's true. That's true.
Do we need like samples sent to us before they know what you're gonna say about them?
I guess. I don't know. I will tell you one thing. I got thermocouples from Amico, and Sarah brought them to me. I shouldn't have said Sarah brought. I'm gonna have to cut that out. I got thermocouples from Amico. The price was $37 for just one Type K thermocouple, 6 inches. And I looked on Clay King, half the price, $20. $20.
Because you bought it right from the retailer, basically.
I bought it from Amico.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant. They're reselling it, right?
I guess, yeah. Yeah, they're reselling it. I don't but Clay King's reselling it too. Why
Mm-hmm.
is Clay King's 20 and there's
They
37?
got the volume, baby.
Um yeah. Fucking bullshit.
Okay.
Uh, uh
I had one other thing.
okay, I'm ready.
All right. What about before the pot is finished? What about glazing?
Okay.
What kind of quality should you be looking for with glazing? Let's say, and maybe this also involves the scope of. I think there's personally benefit in being in a studio because you can try their glazes, understand what you
Oh, for
like, what you don't
sure.
like, how to apply them differently, whether you dip them, whether you paint them, whether you
Mhm.
mix glazes, not, you know, pairing them with two different glazes, inside, outside, dipping, overlapping, whatever.
Right.
Um, what do you think about like where they should be skill wise for glazing?
I feel like glazing is so hard because there's so many fun things that can come out of you just not giving a fucking shit. You know? You
But are they
know,
intentionally not giving a fucking shit, or are they?
they're just like, I mean, like when you just like throw glazes on there and you're just like, I don't know how these are gonna react. Let's just do it. You
Uh-huh.
know? I think that there's so many fun things that can come from that. I think what I always look for is um clean base, like a clean base, like you're wax your butts or wiping off your butts accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
Um that's mostly what I'm looking for, and not dull glazes, you know?
Dull
Like
glazes. What do you mean by that?
like I don't really care how the glaze is applied. Like it could be splattered or whatever, but like if it's one color and it's like a dull color, like it's just like
Like a medium green or something?
not even that. It's just like there's like I can't even explain it. I have this blue glaze. I have and it's horrid. It's like and I think it's horrid. It's just like
Is it like a
not matte.
royal blue or
Yeah,
something? Or
it's royal blue, but the color doesn't matter, but it's not matte and it's not shiny. It's just dull. It's like
okay.
it's lifeless. It
Okay. It
doesn't it
it doesn't lean enough to matte to be like, oh, this is a nice matte surface. And
right.
it's not glossy to be like, oh, this is a nice like glassy
Glossy
look.
surface. Right. It's just lifeless. And I think that's I was trying to find the word. That's what I was trying to say. Like lifeless pottery is really like a huge turnoff to me.
I think some
Just
of that has to do with how you apply it. If you
it
don't
does.
apply
It
it right,
does.
it
Yeah.
can
If you
definitely
don't.
turn out dull.
Yeah. Like if you like this glaze is a total mess up. It was a mystery bucket, right? It's just the glaze. But but yeah, like if you don't apply it thick enough, if you maybe you need to layer some glazes, because like a white glaze can be full of life and a gray glaze can be full of life. It's just in like a single color. But yeah, I think that that's the biggest thing for me.
Okay. What do you think about?
What do you think?
I my personality is I look at the test tile wall and I'm a combo person.
Yeah.
I'm not a solid color. If I want a solid color, I just look at the fucking test tile. I know what it's gonna look like as a solid color. Just look at the
Yeah.
test tile. If I
Yeah.
want a piece to look exactly like that, for me, that's not interesting.
Yeah.
It's more interesting for me to play around with two different colors. And I get it. Some of my glazing is very simple. It's one color first and then another color over top of it. But
Right.
back in the day, I would do more overlapping, like, dipping a bowl horizontally so that
Mhm.
half of it looks like this, and then dipping the next one at an angle so that where they overlap is kind of like a triangle, or doing some wax resist, so doing a whole color in this, and then using wax to do some design on it, and then dipping another glaze, or
Right.
different things like that to play around with how the two different colors interact with each other to produce a cool overlapped effect, because that's less reproducible. I mean, you're in the glaze studio, so you know that that's reproducible, but
Right.
I'm like, if I find a good combo, I'm gonna stick to that. Not for everything, but like, when I was at Baker Hunt, I would always find historically my favorite color was always cappuccino because it paired
Mhm.
really well with certain colors. It was finicky because it would pinhole if you applied it too thick, and it would run a lot if you applied it too thick. But if you found the right colors to go with it, if you layer it right, it could be really interesting and give you some good depth and give
Right.
you some nice variation. And it like drips nicely, and it like finding good contrasting colors to go with it that pair well as like complement each other. So, um, yeah, that's what I think is cool about the glazing situation. I'm more of a find some test tiles that are interesting.
Mhm.
I'm not really like I don't know. It's hard to look back at like year one. I mean, I was using single colors year one probably because I was just like, oh, I
Right.
think
And
this
I
will look
mean,
good with that clay body.
a lot of that has to do with if you are in a community clay studio, a lot of that has to do with the glazes that they offer. Like some
Mhm.
of them could be just fucking terrible. Like
Yeah.
like to be straight, or like if you want something that runs a little bit, there you're probably not going to find that because no community studio is going to be like, "Yes, here's this glaze that if you put it on a little bit too thick, it ruins our kiln shelves."
Yeah.
Like
Or they
nobody's
water their glazes down, so you have to be very specific about
yeah.
how long you're dipping it because some studio, oh man, I don't understand this, but some teachers will be like, dip it in there and wait 6 seconds. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? How thin are these glazes? How are you able to hold them in a bucket for 6 seconds? Are you
I
wiping
know.
them like an inch up from the bottom? Like,
I know it's crazy. Like, well, and even you had the white glaze that you were testing out. I just realized that it's 12 o'clock and I'm in my apartment, and the neighbors above me and below me probably hate me. Um, you had that white glaze, and I was like, you need it. That's way too thick.
yeah,
And like, there's so much application that goes along with glazing and stuff. But like, yeah, if you're in your own studio, you have the ability to control how thick your glazes
yeah.
are.
And I think I generally am a pretty thick glazer.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
How long do
So
you hold your cups in the bucket? Like, what's
like what? Am
the
I talking like a mug?
yeah? Like if you're
Um, Usually the inside's already glazed, and then I would hold it maybe depends on the thickness, but I would say generally like 2 seconds.
okay. See, I'm like, brow, brow, like in
Yeah,
out.
I'm not an in out unless it's already a thick bucket.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
thick for me would be like, if we're talking specific gravity terms, probably like a 165 specific gravity.
Okay.
Like the average for me, most of them are probably around 145, 140. I don't do the
Okay.
specific gravity test, but based on what I remember, because I know I've had some issues with my clear, and I remember what the
Yeah.
consistency looks like at 140, 145, because that's the ideal for the clear.
Yeah.
And that's about where I keep the other ones. Some
Yeah.
of my other ones are thinner, like Juicy Turquoise is a little thinner. Some of the,
Mhm.
it, and I'm sure you save money on glaze the less you use. So if you don't need it that thick, save some
Right.
money, dip it quicker, and
Yeah.
hopefully it'll stay on the body better.
Yeah. I've always been a quick dip, 100% quick dip.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably less strenuous on your clay too to have less glaze on there.
Yeah. And I've always like in traditionally in the past I've layered my glazes,
Do you get
so
as good of depth when you layer them when you're quick dipping it like that?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the glazes were all basically the same base, so they kind of like
Oh,
melded together.
okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of them that are like on top of the other and they have to like run together and
Yeah.
interact a little bit, so it's not the same bases on any of them.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Yeah, I think there's a lot of fluctuation with glazes. Um, but I think you need to be intentional about it. Don't especially a year in, like you need to be more don't like hurry. Like these pieces have made it through a life cycle and you're right at the end. Don't
Yeah, don't
mail it in for the glazing section.
yeah. I hate glazing.
Yeah. Maybe narrow it in with like only use like 4 different colors instead of
Mhm.
8 different colors or something.
Start small.
Yeah. I generally like to find some combos that look good and then be like, okay, I'm going to use this combo on my best of the best pieces.
Yeah.
And then these subpar pieces I'll like do more experiments with to see if I can find another combo or try applying it a different way to see
Mhm.
if like certain dipping technique looks a certain way. Or maybe you like to like pour a second color over the first color
Right.
instead of like dipping it. So there's a lot of different options out there for the
Lots of
glazing.
options. I hate glazing.
Yeah. And I would say like using things like underglazes and slips and stuff. I would say that's probably more of like a intermediate advanced. Like I probably wouldn't even touch that year one. You're still figuring out forms and stuff.
That's true, but it's hard. I could see the drive and like the desire to do like sgraffito and stuff, first year.
Hmm. You said it's hard as in it's hard to learn
Hard mentally
how
not
to.
to do that
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it'd be beneficial beginning students to not even tell them about underglazes or slip,
Yeah.
like, and then maybe when they get intermediate, it's like, okay, now you can make these basic forms.
I know,
Now
but
let's
like
focus on how to add some spice to them, decorate them, add
it's
different textures to them.
that's so ideal, but like in this world of the Instagram,
Yeah,
it's
everybody sees.
impossible.
Yeah, everybody sees. It's like, oh, I saw this person doing this, and I want to try it. How do I do this?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm, okay.
We should go.
You're yawning. Yes. I'm glad I jotted some notes down as we were going because I was like, I got to hit on these different.
That ended up being really fun. We didn't really like finish our conversation of like where you should be, but I do feel like what we talked about may add some insight to how we feel certain shapes and stuff should be.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to just look back at where I'm at. You know,
Yeah.
2007, 23, 16 years back, and say,
Yeah.
where was I at year one? I was in high school. I was doing it for fun. I was going outside of class and
Right.
doing the clay club after school and playing around and
Yeah. I was in college and I was sneaking into the art department on the weekends and the summers and taking showers in the art building and
there were
sleeping in
showers in
this.
the art building.
Yeah, it had well, it was connected to the civil engineering building, so they had to have showers because there was a foundry. Um,
So you're talking about like the emergency showers?
no, there's just showers in the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, just like being in the studio all the time, and then having these bowls that were so thin. And
Mhm.
like I just look back at my pieces in college and then to after college, I'm like, wow, those are so fucking terrible.
Yeah, I had some pretty terrible. My high school ones weren't as. I think some of the worst pots were when I was working independently at the studio where I was like using it as open studio
Yeah.
because
And it didn't have the feedback.
I was making so many pieces
Yeah.
that I was just excited to be making a lot of pieces. And it wasn't as narrowly focused. It wasn't guided based on a curriculum or
Right. Yeah.
we're focusing on this at this time. I was just like making a bunch of mugs and trimming, and you apply a glaze and the handle looks like shit, and you have some of the glazes. I was using so many glazes that they're watered down and I didn't apply them the best because I
Yeah.
didn't stir it up enough, and
Yeah.
you have those kind of pieces and they're like chunky at the bottom, and yeah, there's nobody coming behind me and like kind of helping me like you need to do a little bit better with this.
Yeah. I remember they didn't teach us how to do handles in college. Like, I didn't really take traditional classes. Let's keep that in mind. I like lied and said that I knew how to do it. So she gave me an independent study. But at the sink there was this poster and it had like 15 different styles of handles, and I just used to look at that poster and be like, wow, look at all those different handles.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I tried my first handle on this really terrible red soup mug. It was so bad. Wow. Bad, bad,
Do you
bad,
still
bad.
have it, or do you know where it's at?
I gave it to a friend.
Oh,
It was a
okay.
gift. It was so bad. Um, but I do have some like bowls and stuff. Or I think my mom gave them to me. I might have tossed them.
There were some terrible high school pieces that my parents still have that I really love using when I'm there. It's just like, if anything, they're durable as hell. I mean,
Yeah.
these things lasted like 12 years or 15 years. Like, these things stand the test of time,
Yeah, my mom has like a cup that I made in college that is like her toothbrush cup or whatever, and it's like brown and dark gray and like black, and it's so ugly. It's so bad. Like, uh, I
Yeah.
love it. It's
Some of
like,
those older pieces, and then I got a number of them out of the house because my first sale was at the first like non official sale was like
yeah.
at my parents' Christmas party at their new house. It was probably 20 when was that? That was probably like 2013, something like that. I don't even remember exactly, but it was probably in college, like midway through college. 2012, 2013. I like set up a 6 foot table, threw a tablecloth over it, had all my pieces that I made from there's some high school pieces in there, there's some college pieces in there. They were all pretty meh, you know.
My first show ever, what outside of college, was in Loveland, Colorado, called Art in the Park, I think. And it's a big show. And I don't know how I got in.
I feel like I've heard of that. I think that just happened in Colorado. Maybe that just happened in the
No,
last
no,
like
no, that's the Cherry Creek one. Cherry Creek is huge.
oh
Um, Art in the Park it's like a sculpture show. It's a pretty big sculpture show, and then it's a art show on top of that. And um, I had like painted pieces and pottery pieces, and oh my god, like the audacity, the like the the pure ego that I had. I don't even know. I don't like they were so bad.
I mean you're staying at your booth. You don't think you're hot shit or anything, but you're just like this is what I got.
Yeah, and like pinch pots not even cleaned a bit on the bottom, and like just crazy glazes, and
But at that
um
time you're just trying to make back some money to hopefully pay for your hobby or your what you're trying to do there.
right, I don't even know what I was trying to do. But yeah, just thinking back to all of my
But I feel like some of those customers at that point, they're trying to support, what you're doing,
I think I probably made $100.
what you're trying to get going there.
Yeah. I just want to say this to all the 20-year-olds out there that are like have these like cute ass booths with like neutral colors and like great setups. You're lucky that you had the internet.
To like show what a good booth should look like.
Yeah.
Even if your quality of pieces aren't necessarily there to match the level of booth branding you have.
Yeah. You're so lucky that Pinterest exists.
It's like, I'll grow into this. But even if you had Pinterest, would you have done that? I feel like your personality, you would.
Absolutely not. My booth is going to look like absolute shit no matter what.
I mean, you're like a cardboard sign.
My
shitty cups.
My first booth in Washington, I made these shelves with OSB and I did indoor shows and my shelves were actually really cool. They were those metal rods for the metal shelvings, and then it had I used fence boards and made my own shelves and like put the fence boards on them and they looked really cool.
On top of the actual metal shelves that.
No, they had holes in them and they went on just like the metal shelves.
Oh.
And
how did they not like rock back and forth and stuff?
I'm pretty good at building.
Okay.
And then
they were like the right diameter that they actually fit kind of snug.
They fit snug. And then I was like, these aren't big enough for my show in Leavenworth. And so I made some that were OSB with the same style, like with the metal rods. They were OSB with the metal rods, and then they did rock back and forth. So I made an X in the back with tie-down straps.
With just straps.
Yes. Like
was
neon.
There enough tension that it was pulling tension the boards, so the boards were the legs were kind of angled on the board so that it was like tight.
Yeah. And so I made like an X in the back and thank God those totally bit the dust.
I got a feeling the OSB was probably bending a lot.
It wasn't too
sagging
bad.
A little bit.
They weren't too big.
Oh, okay. It wasn't like 6 foot wide.
No, I think they were 4 feet wide.
Okay. So they probably sag a little bit. I pictured like OSB with just pots sitting on OSB. OSB is like the particle board, right? Where it's all like chips. Yeah.
Yeah, with the green sides.
It's my brand, green sides.
Green sides. Oh my god. I don't even know how I'm successful. I
don't think you would see a person selling like that these days. Probably just because not OSB, but like Pinterest and just the amount of content you see of people's booths.
Yeah, probably.
Or you just get the folding table, like a fold-up 6-foot table. It's like, even if you don't have a tablecloth, or somebody can get a tablecloth, like that's the bare minimum,
Yeah. I've just decided that like my whole life is like trying to make myself unsuccessful. I'm just like actively trying to make myself unsuccessful.
I feel like you just have these situations where you could make a decision to do a little bit extra and you just say, nah. Not even extra, just like put a little bit more effort into something. It's like a little bit more attention to something. Like, I want this to look a little bit better, and you're just like,
nah. Isaac was like, Becca, if you actually put effort, you would be unstoppable. And I was like, I know.
And some of it's like advertising. Like, if you put a little bit more work into advertising, could that make up for the less work that you want to do?
Yeah.
Like, would you be allowed to do less work if you advertised more?
I don't know. I'm not doing very much work right now, so.
But then you have to be that personality of like, I'm telling you about this thing all the time. I got these things to sell and these things to sell. If you didn't know, this thing's out there for sale.
I'd rather sell myself. Thank you.
Oh, man.
And my cats. Okay, we should go.
All
We
right.
should.
Yes, this was fun. This was a good one.
This was fun. It turned out into
I
like a
was worried. I
fun.
was like, well, I
I
mean, we
was
had a
a little
45-minute
bit too.
intro, but I was like, we're not going to get to like an hour and 15 here.
No, but it kind of like turned into a great little back and forth about stuff that we've never even talked about that I
Yeah.
feel like we should have, by now.
Yeah. Hey, Becca had a good topic idea for today that we got
Fuck
like 9
yeah.
months ago or a year ago. Just took us this long for me to be willing to do it.
Be willing to let loose a little.
Yes.
I don't know if it was a good topic, but you had good questions. So,
Sweet.
sweet.
Hey, bring the topic,
Okay.
I bring the questions.
Boom. Perfect duo.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. I have to.
Did you make note of something you needed to cut out?
Huh?